Good evening, everybody. This is Dr. Dhanukumar Patnanshetty from IEEE India Operations Center. Thank you for joining in. We'll be starting the workshop at sharp 6 p.m.
Okay,
Thank you for your patience.
sure.
Hi, Michael. Good morning.
Good evening.
Nice seeing you.
Yeah, likewise. Happy to be here.
Yep.
हाँ तुम ऑफर से करवाना पड़ेगा यू आर करस्पॉन्डिंग तो इसलिए हुआ सबको फाइल है क्या ऑनलाइन है कैसे वही डाकू साइन वाला है नहीं डाकू साइन नहीं है हार्ड कॉपी है हार्ड कॉपी मतलब ये सबको Here. I'm audible?
Yeah, yes, sir, you are audible.
Okay.
Okay.
Good evening, Professor Mesh.
Good morning from California and good evening to all of you. Hello, Michael. Great to see you.
Yes, good morning or good evening. Yeah, really early morning for you.
It does feel strange wearing a suit and sitting in your living room, but that's all right. Hi, Professor Singh. How are you? Good evening.
Fine. How are you? Good morning.
Wonderful, sir. Good to see you.
Nice to see you.
How are things in India? How are things as far as the
Yeah, everything is fine,
situation?
but Corona is increasing in here day by day, in my city also.
Yeah.
So we are safe, but still office is opened and we are working for online examination here and there. So we have to basically,
It is a
and being an
challenge.
administrator, I have to open all the time more files here and there, they are coming and going.
Please be careful. Yeah.
Certainly, I believe because a lot of files and other things are coming. People are also coming in from this.
I mean, I
Very risky.
hesitated. When you saw me on Monday, I had a little bit more hair. And after all the trepidation, I went and got a haircut, but I was very scared.
I also just I went for a haircut.
Well, I purchased some clippers and my wife cut my hair, so I didn't have to go too far for that.
But Michael, I had my mask on right through. And they did a good job. They took my temperature before I went into the store.
Yeah.
I had to wait outside in the car, and it was just one customer at a time. I mean, it was done really nicely. So
Yeah, that's good.
wouldn't quite work for education, though.
Yeah. Well, we had a hotel show us yesterday a mock-up of how they might do a conference, and they had all the tables spaced out and so forth, but they didn't show how people would actually enter the room and exit the room, right? So they said, "Oh, we can accommodate 100 people or whatever it was," and I'm like, "Well, what are they going to go in one by one?" You know, it's a little detail that could really get you in trouble, you know.
Indeed. Yeah, I'm going to join these blinds behind me. So you don't think I'm in Hotel California? I am. Hi, Harish. Good evening. You're muted, I think.
Good morning,
Hello,
Ramesh.
Harish.
Very well, sir. How are you?
Wonderful. You're looking bright there. It's 6 o'clock in the evening.
That's okay. For you, it is too early, but still, thanks for joining.
Absolutely. I was telling Sri, Harish, I celebrate a milestone on July 20th. Okay. And no, it's not the Apollo landing, but personally, I turned 60 on July 20th.
Oh, that's a milestone.
As you know, thank you. It's our tradition to have a ceremony at the temple. So I've been asked to show up at the temple at 6:30 in the morning, 2 weeks from now. So I figured that this is good training. Except I won't be dressed in a suit.
Good.
I'm only about 6 months behind you, or so.
But you know how it goes, Michael.
Yeah.
No, it's an interesting ceremony because obviously your children didn't get to see your wedding, but your children actually participate and you reenact your wedding vows with your children.
Ah, very nice.
So it's done when you're 60, basically saying that you're ready for, doing service to humanity, which I think I've been doing for a while. So,
I thought maybe it signaled, it's more than your halfway point and everything else is,
yes.
icing on the cake or whatever.
Indeed.
So, Munir, are you going to put up anything, or are you going to?
I have made Dr. Milligan the presenter right now. Dr. Milligan, if you can just put out the title presentation.
So first is Professor S.N. Singh. Is there anything that S.N. Singh?
No, I don't have any PPT, and basically just I'll welcome and I'll tell about what is the NBA process here and
Okay,
and
fine.
how it is very useful that we should go for ABET. That's basically we have to.
Okay.
So I will talk only 5 minutes, not more than that, but more time will be given to Michaela and the Ramesh, so they will be talking and giving all the
Okay,
questions.
fine, sir. Thank you. We'll start. Is there any housekeeping announcement?
We'll do it in another. We'll give another 2 minutes. People are joining in right now. I see.
Yeah, because it's not 6 o'clock. We have to.
Yeah, so we have right now. We just hit the 300 mark, so we have people joining in.
Can you hear me okay?
Everything is fine.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes,
Yeah.
Michael. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, because when I went to share the screen, I've lost my control panel. I can't see where my control panel is. That's why I'm. But I guess, see, when I have to stop sharing, I have a little window, little small window. Where would the other? Oh, I see. I go to the top. Okay, then I can get it back.
Yeah.
I see. I'm used to using the bottom from the top. Okay. All right.
Harish, I was going to ask you, so you had well over 1,700, I think, right, registrations?
Yeah.
And let's hope that more than 20% of them show up.
No, still the numbers will rise. It is rising by every second almost.
Good morning, Harish. Good morning, Ramesh. Sri here.
Good morning, Sri, or good evening. Namaskaram. How are you?
Namaskar. How are you? I'm doing fine, sir. How are you?
Bright and early and ready for my prayers. No, I'm just kidding. And Harish, I assume that you want everybody other than the speaker to turn off their camera, right? Because you don't want us to be.
Yeah, in the beginning, and only those who are controlling the slides and speaking can have their video. Otherwise, speakers can be there, 3, 4 speakers.
Okay. Are we planning to take like even like a 2-minute bio break in between? Because are we just going straight through?
Yeah, that's okay.
Harish?
So Munir, yeah.
Are we planning to take like a 2-minute bio break between the speakers, or are you planning to go straight through?
We should go straight through because in between speakers can take a few minutes break and come back, those who are not speaking at that time.
Okay, good enough.
Because we will be holding maybe 400, 500 people or even beyond that.
Got it. I'll plan accordingly. I know where Michael's going to end, so. And you're doing Q&A at the very end, right? After all of this are done.
Yeah. Munir is going to make an announcement. Munir, why don't you?
Yeah. So thank you, everybody, and I would take my opportunity to welcome everybody here. I also see Steve Welby, who has joined us from US for this particular conference. Steve, I welcome you as well. Welcome everybody, and it's right on the clock right now. And before we hand it over, I would like to go over a quick logistics. As you all see that, and I'm sure you might have been recording, or you might have been attending all these webinars wherein it's all muted because just to avoid any background noises, etc. So hence this is going to be stay like this. And I would request all the participants to please post your questions, and we have moderators who are looking through your questions and curating all the questions. All the questions will be answered at the end of it. So please, I again request all of you to please post your questions on the Q&A, and also if you can put it on the chat window as well, and we will look into that at the end of the session. The other thing that I would also like to announce is since there's a limitation of 1,000 people on the WebEx, we have also integrated this with IEEE TV, and this is going live on IEEE TV. So those of your friends, if you are not, if you know that if you are not able to, if they are not able to join on the WebEx due to the limitation, so this is a very on-demand web session, and we have like more than 1,000 people who are registered. So I'm sure some of them would not have some space here on the WebEx, and hence we have accommodated them on the IEEE TV streaming. And the questions and the moderation is also going to be doing, will be taken care on that as well. And the last thing is this session is going to be recorded and will be shared on the IEEE TV and YouTube as well. So the would be sent to all the participants for your later viewing as well. With that, I would now request Mr. Harish Mysore to take over.
Good day to everyone who has joined this webinar from across the world. I would like to welcome all of you to the IEEE-ABET webinar on accreditation and quality of engineering education in South Asia. It's a joint initiative by IEEE and ABET, supported by IEEE India Council. This webinar brings into focus the need for accreditation and continuous improvement of quality of education programs. It is imperative for educational institutions to deliver on this promise to the next generation. ABET accreditation instills confidence that a collegiate program has met standards essential to prepare graduates to enter critical engineering fields in the global workforce. Graduates from an ABET accredited program have a strong educational foundation and are capable of leading the ways in innovation and implementation, thus shaping the way forward. Here, I would like to highlight that IEEE is a founding member of ABET and is the largest of ABET's 36 member societies. IEEE is a member society which helps to set policies, develop strategies, creates and maintains evaluation criteria, and selects and assigns program evaluators in IEEE's fields of interest. This webinar has brought experts from IEEE and ABET who will be discussing the importance of accreditation and continuous improvement to the quality of the programs. This is the critical need for South Asia region. Today, we have delegates from Bangladesh, India, Nepal, Sri Lanka, Pakistan, from South Asia, and number of well-wishers joining from rest of the world. With these few words, I would like to welcome the distinguished speakers and all the participants to this very important session, which is one of the many sessions that we will be organizing with the help of IEEE India Council. I'll be moderating this session over the next 2.5 hours. Firstly, I would like to welcome Dr. S.N. Singh, Chair of IEEE India Council, to provide welcome remarks. But before that, I just would like to read his brief profile. Professor S.N. Singh obtained his MTech and PhD in electrical engineering from Indian Institute of Technology, Kanpur in 1989 and 95, respectively. Presently, he is the Vice Chancellor of Madan Mohan Malviya University of Technology, Gorakhpur, India. Before joining the University of Gorakhpur, Professor Singh was professor in electrical department of electrical engineering at Indian Institute of Technology, Kanpur, and also worked as visiting professor at Denmark Technical University. He is also currently the chair of IEEE India Council. Professor S.N. Singh, welcome you, sir. Over to you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Good morning and good evening and good afternoon, depending upon the time zone. So it is very important, I think, webinar, and really it is very, very useful. And this is more useful because right now we are in such a pandemic situation due to the COVID-19. As we all know, we are basically localized to the office, localized to our home, and basically it's a lot of restrictions in the movement, and we are having enough time to listen to everybody. And this will be also, I can see the criteria, but we are getting a lot of opportunity also, I say. And this is the way you can see, this is the opportunity. More than 500 people are connected through this webinar. Now coming to really first, I should welcome, since I'm India Council Chair. So I welcome and I thank also Professor Ramesh, Michael, Mashur, Munir, and other panelists, as well as all our viewers and listeners. You know, IEEE is always pioneer and always try to improve the education of society. Especially we are the education in terms of technical education more. Otherwise, nowadays, when we are also going beyond its boundary, like the pre-university and other things also IEEE is thinking, even though IEEE is going into management, total quality, many other societies are now is growing. So the IEEE in totality, it is basically moving towards the, no doubt, the research, publications, other things are going, innovations. But at the same time, IEEE is also thinking how we can improve the quality of the education at the various institutions. No doubt, we are having the all levels of academic institutions, as we all know, starting from the MIT, and also the very, normally people say it is a tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, and many tiers up to you, depending on the country. We have even also our having the various institutions, we say, of national importance, state importance, or maybe whatever you can say. So we are having the variety of the institutions and all their location, its availability of the teachers, their even the availability of the resources, many things are hindrance, and we are having the diverse culture, diverse education system, diverse, everything is changing. You will see even the syllabus of one university at the same here, and one is very adherent to my university, is a different. So in this whole scenario, and everybody says, look, I'm good, is obvious. And it should be also, we should say proud of our system, proud of our, where I'm vice chancellor, I'll say my education system is best. Everybody is saying. Now, who will say who is best? For that, we should have certain mechanisms, certain accreditation, where say, look, there is a one boundary where you have crossed, so you are accredited, means you are having some basic norms, or something you are meeting that quality, so you are beyond that one, and others are not in that group. So in India, we are having, you know, all that we are having the National Board of Accreditation already under the AICT, that also giving the accreditation, and now it is going to be mandatory, I can tell you. And we are forced to go for the accreditation first. So the NBA comes on, and it is a number game. Why I'm saying number game? If you are, suppose you are having a very tall, even the novel list here in this institution, and you are not having that ratio 1:25, you are not qualified for the NBA. So that is the first mandatory requirement. As we all know, those are the teachers in India, they know. So certain prerequisites, then you can say this number for this number for this number for. So many things are there. And based on that criteria, we say, okay, look, you are accredited for 3 years or you are accredited for 5 years. But again, you have to go for this process. It starts. So this is MBA. Once you go for the non-technical, like even though being a university, I am also having MSc, management, other programs like BBA and the B Pharmas. So then there is a NAC, this National Accreditation and Assessment Committee. They also give it the A grade, B grade, C grade, and with the plus and other things categories are there. So they go, their perspective is totally different. So that is also giving, so people are just going and highlighting, look, this is a NBA accredited institutions are NAC. But beyond this ABET, this is totally different. It is not a, I just add to the my knowledge, and again, my experts will be giving more emphasis. It is not a number game. It is something different, some sort of assessment, and that is more relevant for all the country. Maybe just as the NBA is for India only, not for US. So, but that ABET is across the globe and accepted by the globe. And that's why we want that, and we decided that we should go for, that's my listeners, my viewers, not only from India, from all the Asian as well as other, even the Europe, US people have also registered, I came to know. So the many people just want to listen and want to see that what is ABET. No doubt we have heard the name. You might have heard the name because many universities, they are writing also and they have started. In India also, we are having many universities, they have gone for this. But we have to see and we have to compare where is NBA, where is ABET, what is the basic requirement, what is the cost related, and how we can get this clearance, what is the minimum requirement, what are the other things that they will be certainly highlighting. If required, we can go for the many more similar type of ABET. Already we discussed one day before, that's if this is a one basic, maybe later also we can go for, so that people should be aware and we should get a benefit from the what IEEE is doing. And we know the IEEE is for humanity, as a tag name, technology for humanity, we say. And this is, education is one of the things for any humanity. If education is not there, there is no humanity, I can say. So that is a basic important, that education should be lifted. Then we can think of having research, innovation, publication, all things are secondary. First, education, I believe, if education is sound, we can do and we can change the whole world. And that's why this IEEE coming forward. I thank Professor Ramesh Michael, Harish to take the initiative, Munir and other panelists for this wonderful. And you can see more than 650 people have joined so far, and this is a great success of this. So I'll not take much time, as I said. I want to listen, even though other my speakers, and also I'll go because my university has not gotten for a bit. I can also go for this one. Thank you very much.
Thank
you. Thank you, Professor Asan Singh, for your introductory remarks and welcoming everyone to this program. Now, I would like to hand over the baton to Mike Milligan. Dr. Mike Milligan is the Executive Director and Chief Executive Officer of ABET, the global accreditor for college and university programs in applied and natural science, computing, engineering, and engineering technologies. Under his leadership, the organization has increased its geographical reach and diversity, now representing 36 member societies and accredited programs in 32 countries. He also served 24 years as a career US Air Force officer. Milligan has a doctoral degree from University of Texas, Austin, and a master's from University of Massachusetts at Lowell. Over to you, sir. Thank you.
All right. So good evening, and thank you for that introduction. And first of all, I'd like to thank IEEE India Council for hosting this webinar. This is a great opportunity, and I really appreciate the time to talk a little bit about one of my favorite topics. I'd also like to thank my co-presenters, Professors Ramesh and Singh, for their contribution to this webinar. Since I joined ABET, well, a little over 11 years ago, I've had an opportunity to travel around the world and see up close and personal a lot of educational systems. And I've been to India probably, well, certainly more than any other place in the world, and I'm constantly impressed by a number of things. I'm impressed by your history. I'm impressed by the warm welcome that I receive every time I go there. The people are wonderful. The food is excellent, and really the commitment to quality education is pretty profound. And so that's kind of where we get to talk a little bit about our role in that. So again, thanks for inviting me to present this morning. And I'm sorry I can't be there. I was planning on traveling, but as we all know, we're pretty much stuck, I think, at our home location. So in any event, I did want to kind of open things up and talk a little bit about the importance of accreditation in general, how we accredit around the world, and also some of our direct engagement on a global scale. So with that, why do we even talk about accreditation? Well, accreditation in general, whether it's from ABET or another organization, really demonstrates a number of things. Primarily that students are going to be ready to enter the profession, and that's pretty critical, because back in 1932, actually, when ABET was founded, it was founded by a number of member societies, 6 total, but really what they're all after was industry wanted to make sure that students that were coming out of engineering programs at that time were ready to, kind of hit the road running, if you will, and had all the requisite skills and knowledge and experiences to be effective from the beginning. And so they formed ABET, and since that time, we've been doing the good work that we do. We always talk about confidence, and what does accreditation provide? Well, it provides confidence to a number of users, and I'll talk about those constituents here in just a minute specifically, but really what it's all about is making sure that students have the education that they need, that faculty understand the commitment to quality and their role in that, to the general public, because the general public is ultimately the users of much of the technologies and the services that graduates from engineering and computing programs are going to serve. And so we want to make sure that the public has confidence that the designs and again, the services they'll be using are safe. So we talk about confidence again in producing the next generation of the global workforce. And as we all know, globalization has really driven a lot of industries to become, to hire students from around the world. It used to be much more segmented, but of course nowadays it's not uncommon as a matter of fact, is very common to have teams of technical people that are scattered around the globe working with one another. So making sure that they're all prepared to be effective and to be competent is important. We are all about making the world a better place, and I think that lines up very well with IEEE's mission as well in terms of advancing technology for humanity, because at the end of the day, everything that we do really does impact our planet and the citizens of our planet. So we want to make sure that we're always focused on that. I did want to talk about industry because industry, to a large part, is one of the ultimate customers, if you will, because certainly they take the large portion or the largest portion of graduates that come out of programs and hire them directly. So, why does industry care about accreditation? Okay. Well, again, I mentioned this, making sure that the requirements are met for students and graduates to enter the workforce, and industry actually plays a direct role in that. I'll talk a little bit about that later. They, excuse me, they participate in what we call industry advisory groups, so they get a chance to influence what students learn in the classroom, and they also provide this opportunity for a global educational perspective. I'll talk more about our global engagement here shortly, but things have changed significantly over the past few decades, where maybe our focus was less global. Now it's certainly global. I've heard from more than one of my industry counterparts how they recruit from specific institutions, and typically those institutions are the ones that have accredited programs, and so it helps them immensely. I was talking with a representative from Bechtel, which is a very large international company that builds huge projects, nuclear power plants, dams, things of this nature. And one of the challenges they had was recruiting students from around the world, because they typically work in lots of different places, but sometimes can't find the talent. And when they found out that we actually are involved in accrediting programs around the world, that was very comforting to them, because then they knew that, hey, they could go and look at those institutions for good quality graduates. Here's a list of just a few of our partners. Most recently, we have our own industry advisory council that advises our board of directors, and here are some of the companies that they represent most recently, and you'll probably recognize several names up there. It's changing. We always have somewhere around 20 individuals, senior individuals that represent their industries that talk to our board, advise our board, and then of course each university or college institution program will have their own industry advisory council. But I think it's important to kind of illustrate the commitment. And here's a really good demonstration, I think. If you go to Indeed.com, which is a pretty popular job search web crawler, I guess it's called, it will go out and search for jobs if you indicate certain criteria. And so here I just put in the word ABET and said, go find jobs that have ABET somewhere in the description. You'll see it came back on the 21st of February. With over 6,000 jobs. And so if you look at those a little bit more closely, you'll see that they're looking for students that have either graduated from an ABET accredited program, it's either required or preferred. And so I think that speaks volumes, and it's to the importance of what we do, and it's not solicited by us, it's just information that's out there. Certainly, academic institutions also have an opportunity to really benefit from the kind of work that we do. I think the biggest benefit is that there's this third-party confirmation of the quality of programs and the commitment to quality, much like ISO, the International Standards Organization. When organizations become ISO certified, that's a clear demonstration of the commitment to quality and a quality culture. And I think the very same thing holds true for institutions, in this case, the University of Maryland, not too far from where I am. It also provides national, international recognition, and this is important, again, back to the industry perspective, but also from other institutions. So if you want to seek students to come for graduate studies and so forth, understanding a little bit about their program, the quality checks and so forth, and if they're accredited, that certainly makes that job a lot easier. Again, recognition by the profession. They'll seek out certain programs, certain institutions to recruit from, because that they know the students are well prepared. And I think equally important is it helps attract really good faculty and students. And of course, that is really the bedrock, the foundation of an institution is its faculty and the kinds of students that it attracts. And so you're going to stand a much better chance if the faculty and students understand that there's, again, a commitment to quality and this national, international recognition and so forth. And to some degree, there is some funding that depends on accreditation. I know in the US, there's certain government scholarships and so forth that are only available, I should say government and non-government as well. They're only available for students that attend programs that are accredited, because they certainly want to make sure that their program, or the money that they'll be spending on these students is invested properly. So switching to faculty a little bit and talking about what's the value of accreditation to faculty, I think that one of the best examples is probably this commitment to best practices. And why I say this is, through this process of becoming accredited, one of the great values to me, I think, when I went through this process, when I was on faculty, is the opportunity to learn from one another. You learn from your reviewers, when you become involved in the process and come to our symposium, for example, you share practices with other institutions on how to improve the quality of not just the program, but how you assess student learning and so forth. And so that's a big plus. The structured mechanisms, this is the continuous improvement process, and I'll touch on that briefly just a little bit later, but really what that's all about is, you understand going in to a program, to the institution, that they're committed to quality because they have the system in place, and then they're following it, and it just becomes, again, part of the culture, part of how faculty and how the institutions do business. And then finally, of course, it's commitment to showing, that yes, indeed, the institution is is committed to improving the quality of students' education, and again, focused on all the things that are important to making that happen. So again, it really is an outward commitment to quality, and I think most faculty want to be affiliated with that type of institution. Of course, parents and their family are important. When you write tuition checks, or you support your son or daughter at an institution, a program, you want to make sure when they graduate that they have good prospects for getting good, good employment, good jobs, and so forth. And so certainly having, sending your child to a accredited program says a lot. And of course, we all want them to be able to, graduate and get into the profession. And so I think probably one of the biggest benefits from a parent's point of view is that, the investment they're making in educating the child is going to pay off and make their lives, their son or daughter's lives, rich and successful. All right, so just switching gears a little bit and talk about what we mean by accreditation. And so sort of some of the ground rules, if you will, what we call the generally accepted principles of accreditation. It's important that the organization's non-governmental, and this is primarily to avoid any potential or perceived conflicts of interest. We don't want to be influenced by any governmental organization to either accredit or not accredit or whatnot a particular institution. So non-governmental is critical. Obviously, we want a process that's going to be both fair and impartial. Okay. In our case, peer review is critical. That's what we base our reviews on. So what I mean by that is, when you have a civil engineering program, for example, undergo review, the reviewers that come from ABET will be civil engineers, either practitioners or educators in their own right, and so forth. And so that's really an important aspect of the kind of work that we do. All right, we only look at programs, so we're not looking beyond that. So again, you have an individual evaluator for a program. In the US, we also have institutional accreditors. We're not involved in that, but the institutional accreditors will look at the institution as a whole, and they will look at broader aspects of the institution and how they do business, where we're much more focused on the program and the content of the program. ABET accreditation is voluntary. In most cases, that's true. Not in all countries, though. In some countries, of course, it's required. But where we are and where we've been involved, it's been voluntary, and that's important because that says that the program is inviting us to come, and they want sort of the service that we're providing. One of the best benefits of a continuous improvement process is this idea of self-assessment, and so certainly when someone goes through the process of becoming accredited, I would say, without exception, one of the best benefits of going through that process is the self-assessment and examining yourself and how you're doing and how you can make your program better. So that works out really well. This is a continuous process, so the ABET in our case we visit typically every 6 years. So what we do though is really more of a verification visit. And what I mean by that is, the program will have this continuous improvement process in place. They're following it. They're assessing student learning. They're taking the results of that, making adjustments to the program to improve, the experience for the students. And then we just come again once every 6 years typically, and just verify that indeed you're doing what you say you're doing, and you're doing a good job of it. One of the things that is important to understand is, we have a number of criteria, and Dr. Ramesh will talk about that. But basically, you can't offset or overly compensate one area for the others. You have to meet all the criteria in order to be successfully accredited. But again, we'll talk about that in the second half of our presentation. The other thing that's not necessarily unique about us, but something that is different with respect to some accreditors around the world, is we are not involved in ranking at all. Okay, and so if you go to our website and you look up institutions that are accredited, or programs rather that are accredited at various institutions, you'll see that they're either accredited or they're not accredited. Okay, there's no ranking of any type. All right, so we view our criteria as a sort of a minimal standard, and if some programs will exceed that by a great deal, some less or so, I suppose. But in any event, again, it's programs are either accredited or not accredited. And again, the other thing I wanted to mention, because sometimes this is confusing, is we look at the program, we don't look at the individuals. So we're not looking at the individual students and sort of certifying their success. We're looking at the program holistically, and it's important that the program is set up in a way to allow the students to be successful. I guess the best way to describe that. And so again, we're looking at the program, not looking at individuals. Later on, many individuals go off and become licensed professionally and that sort of thing, and that's where the certification sort of comes into play. Okay, I use that word holistically. I'm going to pick up on that again, and I just want to say that when we review programs, we're looking at the program in its entirety. Okay, and we'll look at all aspects of the program, and this is a simple continuous improvement, continuous quality improvement sort of cycle where you plan out your activities, you execute them, you assess them, checking them, and then you act in terms of changing any component of your program to enhance, or to improve any aspects of that. And then, of course, the accreditation process helps along the way, because what we're looking for is evidence that indeed you are executing such a program, and the fact that basically students are benefiting from it. And we have well over 4,000 programs that do this all the time. So I think now, especially over these past several decades, the idea of this commitment to continuous improvement has really been universally accepted as a formal means to improve whatever aspect, manufacturing or education or whatever other process happens to be. So let me talk a little bit more specifically about who we are with respect to first of all, our membership. And of course, IEEE is hosting this webinar, and they are one of our founding members. IEEE is, and I'm actually a member of IEEE myself, so happy to say that. But IEEE is one of our founding members. It's the largest in terms of individual membership, but also in terms of the numbers of programs that IEEE is responsible for providing evaluators to go out on reviews. And so if you look at any of our accreditation statistics on our website, for example, you'll see that electrical and computer engineering, and then other such programs that are accredited by, or are reviewed by IEEE rather, far outnumber the others. But you can see we've grown from actually 7 original founding members. I think I mentioned 6, it's actually 7, to now where we're up to 36 member societies, and now in a number of areas. Certainly our heritage is engineering. You would expect that, but we also have a pretty big number of programs in computing and in what we call the natural and applied sciences. And so these organizations represent the various professions. They provide our evaluators, again, the peer reviewers, okay, and for us to use as we go out and review individual programs. So this is their primary role, again, representing the profession. That's the peer review part. They are responsible for our program criteria. So if you look at electrical engineering, for example. The program criteria in electrical engineering or computer engineering is what we call owned by IEEE and the representatives there. So they help develop program criteria because, quite frankly, the professional technical societies are probably in the best position to understand what's required in the profession across the board. Okay, and so IEEE does a really good job of keeping that criteria relevant, contemporary, and focused on the things that are important. Our member societies play an important role in governance. They sit on our board, various boards and committees and so forth. They nominate what we call our commissioners, our team chairs. I'm going to talk about what a team looks like here shortly, but they represent a good number of our volunteers, and of course they also recruit and assign our program evaluators. So those IEEE members, for example, you may be an IEEE member if you're interested in becoming an evaluator for ABET. You're certainly welcome to do that. We have a number of well over a couple hundred evaluators outside the U.S. and that participate in IEEE activity. I'm sorry, in ABET activities on behalf of IEEE. Okay. But IEEE has their own standards and their application process and so forth. And IEEE will be the ones that will review applications and approve and then nominate evaluators. But of course, they are the heart and soul of ABET, because without our evaluators and our team chairs, we certainly can't do the important work that we do. All right, so quickly, just not to get down into too much detail, but just to kind of give you an idea how we're organized. We actually have a strategic side and an operational side I'd like to talk about. You're probably most familiar with the operational part, or will be, because that's where the teams get formed and go off and look at programs and so forth. So our biggest number, of course, are our program evaluators. I just touched on that a minute ago. We have between the program evaluators and our commissioners well over 2,000 individuals that go out and do reviews for us, and you'll see some of the responsibilities here listed. We also have the strategic side, of course. We have to, we have our board of directors and our what we call our board of delegates, which represent our individual societies that do provide all the typical fiduciary sort of responsibilities and some of the fiduciary tasks that are required for an organization, a nonprofit organization like ourselves. So again, this is how we're organized, and I'll talk a little more detail about the operational side here in just a minute. I did want to point out, though, that something that's important to understand is this operational part. These commissioners, these program evaluators, they're the ones that are really involved ultimately with the accreditation decisions. I, for example, am not involved in any way, primarily due to potential conflicts of interest, but also the commissions are the ones that are set up to make those decisions. So the program evaluators will go to look at programs. They'll make an initial recommendation for an accreditation status or action, and then the commissions later on will review all the reports and so forth, and they will make the final decisions. And again, I have a timeline, and I'll show you exactly how that happens. Okay, we have 4 commissions. We call them ANSAC, CAC, or EAC, and ETAC. Most of you will probably be familiar with the lower CAC, EAC, which is the largest, of course, because it deals with engineering programs and engineering technology as well, 4-year and 2-year programs. Again, they make all the decisions on our accreditation actions. They come from our societies. Again, I mentioned that the commissioners, which also act as team chairs, and that's one of their other roles, and the program evaluators. And then the commissions also make changes to criteria, the policies and procedures, and that comes through different criteria committees, again, coming from the individual societies. So that's not something that comes from our board of delegates. They're in the approval process, but it starts with our commissions. Just a few facts. Well over 100,000. This number is a bit dated, so it's probably significantly more than that, and we're in the process of updating that number. But lots of students come out of ABET accredited programs each year. I guess that's what I would say. At different levels, the majority at the baccalaureate, but we have programs that are accredited at the master's level as well as 2-year associate degrees. So there are programs across the board. Again, it's all peer review, and the thing that's important to understand is our reviewers come from both academia and industry, as I mentioned, but also, they're not financially compensated, so they volunteer their time. We pay all their travel expenses and things like that, but they do not get a stipend, or nor are they paid in any way for their service. And I think that really speaks a lot to the commitment of our volunteers. They do it because they feel very strongly that they're contributing to improving higher education. They're committed to improving the student experience. And they find it very satisfying. So I think that's probably something that's really important for me to share. Also, I wanted to make sure that people understood that this idea of accreditation is tied to continuous improvement, meaning you can't your program can't be accredited by ABET unless you have a formal continuous improvement process in place. Again, we sort of verify that we do verify that you're using that and that you're collecting data, that you're making adjustments to your program and so forth. But it's critical that that you understand that this continuous improvement is basically the foundation for the kind of work that we do. And then, of course, I mentioned our significant industry support, and really that is something that is different around the world depending upon where you are and the accreditors that we partner with. Some have industry support, some do not, but again, our founding really was based on this need to develop a strong cadre of graduates coming out of institutions. ISO, yes, sorry. Missed on that. So we ourselves are committed to continuous improvement, and I think one of the best ways to do that is for us to commit to something formal. And so we are certified under the ISO's 9001 standards. We just went through our review this past 2 months ago, actually, and we're going to be recertified again. And I think this is I'm quite proud of this because we're one of the only very few accreditors around the world that are ISO certified. And the only one in engineering that I'm aware of. There's a couple in maybe in the health sciences, but beyond that, it's not an expectation, but I think it's a good opportunity for us to show leadership and commitment to quality ourselves. So I did want to make sure that you understood that we believe in what we do. All right, so we are, just real quickly on staff, we're located in Baltimore, Maryland, and although right now we're scattered because we haven't been back to our building since mid-March. But these are the kind of, we have a pretty big support staff, and basically we support all the volunteers that do all the good work that we do. So we're interested, we make sure that we are involved in making, reimbursing travel, dealing with technology, setting up meetings and those kinds of things. We have 38 full-time people, including myself, 13 part-time, and we also have a resource in India, Kanta Reddy, who is located in Hyderabad. And Kanta's been instrumental in helping programs there connect with us and also understand some of the nuances of becoming accredited by ABET. So I did want to mention his name. I'll give you his contact details here at the very end of our presentation. So if you want to reach out to him, you certainly can do that. Our global engagement, let's talk about how we're involved globally. And I always talk about us being engaged in 4 ways. And primarily the reason we do it is because we want to make the world a better place, all right? We want to increase the quality of STEM education. That's our focus. Certainly globalization has driven a lot of the work that we do because the demand has been there for, again, qualified graduates. And so we play a critical role in doing that. Obviously, our member societies are global, IEEE probably being one of the best examples. There's more members outside the US than inside the US, for example. But again, they are helping to set the standards around the world for engineering education in the various disciplines. And so we are very complementary to the work that our societies do. And also our team chairs and program evaluators, globalizing that. And as I mentioned, we have a couple hundred program evaluators from outside the US. And that's important because a global perspective is critical to the work we do. If we want to make the world a better place, if we want to improve the quality of life for individuals, if we want to preserve the quality of life of our planet and so forth, then globalization is going to be critical. So here are the 4 ways that I want to talk about. We have a number of what we call MOUs, which are just formal agreements with international accreditors, not really detailed, but basically just an acknowledgement that we'd like to work with them and basically share best practices with one another. We are involved in a number of what we call mutual recognition agreements, and these agreements basically recognize each other's accrediting systems as being what we call substantially equivalent, so that we can recognize graduates from each other's programs as in terms of mobility and so forth for students coming and going between countries. There's 4 of them there. The one that's probably the most well-known is the Washington Accord. That's the oldest. Other than we have a bilateral with Canada, but that goes back a long ways. But in terms of multinational, these are the ones that we're involved with. And you can see the Washington Accord. We have now 20 full signatories, 8 provisionals, and then Sydney, which is the baccalaureate version of technology 11 and so forth. And so the Soul Accord is one that we've been involved with for quite a while as well, and that's really focused on computer science, information systems, information technology. And again, that is one that has been pretty active in terms of growth and recently. I just wanted to point out that when you'll hear the words International Engineering Alliance, those refer to those first 3 accords, plus there's another 4 accords under the IEA umbrella, but those deal with professional mobility and registration and licensing. We are not involved in that. There's another organization from the US, NCEES, which is a representative for those other 4 accords but and agreements. But anyway, you'll see IEA mentioned frequently, and that's what that refers to. We also are involved with a number of global engineering organizations. There's lots of organizations out there that want to do good work in this area, and so we are actively involved. And of course, we accredit programs, and I'll talk more about that in just a moment. To the MOUs, this just kind of highlights some of the countries that we have formal agreements with. The oldest with Canada. It's kind of our natural geographical partner, if you will, in North America, and certainly Mexico and others. But we have formal agreements with these countries. With these accreditors from these countries. And again, it allows us to basically share best practices and to be involved formally with them. Washington Accord, I just wanted to point out, I think most of you know or have heard about the Washington Accord. It started in 1989 with these 6 signatories. The 90s were a bit of a slow growth period, and so we only added 2, and you'll see South Africa, Hong Kong. And then in the 2000s, things picked up, primarily in Asia. As you can see, you'll see a number of new signatories there. And then again, this past decade has been pretty fruitful with respect to others. And so we have, again, a total of 20 signatories with 8 provisionals, and those provisionals are on their way to becoming full signatories. However, there's a pretty rigorous and formal process for them to go through, because again, once they're recognized, then again, we're recognized in substantial equivalency of their systems. And NBA, of course, in India is the Washington Accord signatory from that area. All right, international collaboration. So here's some of the organizations that we're involved with, all good. And we're involved in some more than others, more deeply than others. And INCWAHE is one that we've been involved with here recently. INCWAHE is a very broad organization, doesn't focus just on STEM accreditation, but accreditation across the board in many areas. And that's important because there's a lot of good practices that are developed outside the STEM accrediting area. And so anyway, we're involved and support a number of organizations. These are the kind of numbers we have right now. So we update our records on the 1st of October or thereabouts every year. And right now you'll see the numbers of programs and around the world in the US and outside the US. And again, the non-US programs, or the ones outside the US, are the ones that have been growing the fastest, because I think there's just the demand is there. And we've been in business well over 80 some years in the US, and most all engineering programs now have been accredited there. And I would say the growth in the US is primarily going to be in some of the other areas by commission. And so you'll see the different commissions here. ANSAC is probably the one with the biggest opportunity, just because it's much broader in the applied natural sciences, although accreditation in those areas is not as traditional as in some other areas. And of course, computing is another area that's growing fast. And just to give you an idea, so the non-US now represents 21% of the total programs. When I joined ABET in 2009, that was a very small number, single digit, I think 4% or something along those lines. And so the growth, again, has been pretty substantial. And I think it's great because, again, it just shows this commitment to quality education. And certainly, goods and services that we use every day come from everywhere in the world. So it's in all of our best interests to have good quality education in as many places as possible. Here's the growth. We've been growing about 140 programs a year, which is a pretty good growth rate. I think a lot of organizations would like to have that sort of growth curve. And again, it's driven by a number of different factors, but I think primarily due to this understanding that a commitment and this third-party confirmation of quality is important in lots of different areas in many different ways. And again, I touched on that with value to the industry, faculty, parents, and so forth. All right, here are some areas that we have recently been involved with, and as you'll notice, all outside the engineering area, but for the most part, one that has really taken off in a big way is cybersecurity. Of course, everyone understands the importance of being able to conduct commerce on the internet in a safe and manageable way. And so that's one area that's really taken off. And we've had a number of others, again, in mostly in these in natural sciences and applied sciences as well. I guess the big thing that we always ask ourselves is, are we preparing students to be successful around the world? Again, it's very common for teams of engineers, scientists, others to have contributions from numerous groups around the world. So we want to make sure that they're all adequately prepared. I like to look at the UN Sustainable Development Goals as a way to help focus faculty on teaching students, because the interesting thing about, if you look at these goals, I'm sure you've probably seen them or have heard of them, but if you look at them in any kind of detail, the one common thread throughout all of them is going to be in good quality education and in STEM education, engineering education. So you can look at any one of those goals, and I can tell you why it's important that in order for us to achieve these goals, how a strong technical education is critical to addressing these. So this is a good way to talk in the classroom with students about making the world a better place and so forth. And again, you can pick any of these and really use them as good examples. So the good news is today's students want to be engaged and want to make a difference, and they want to be involved in these types of things. And so again, if you don't know about the SDGs, or you're slightly familiar, I'd recommend you go to the website and have a look. It's quite an interesting experience. All right, I talked about IEEE and their commitment. I picked out the 2017 annual report because it talked about what a great cover, inspiring change, empowering people. And the letter from the president talks about kind of the bottom line here. Scientists, as engineers and scientists and educators, we have the responsibility to change our world for the better. And I couldn't say it any more eloquently. And again, ABET's committed to this fully, and that's how we focus all the work that we do. Certainly, that's what, again, the graduates of our programs are going to be playing a huge role in. A number of years ago at our symposium, Dr. Daryl Pines, who was the Dean of Engineering and now is the President of the University of Maryland, talked about how this generation of students are socially connected and how they want to help solve societal problems. And I see that all the time. That's great news for us. And so what we need to do is, when we have an opportunity to engage students in the classroom, use examples. The SEGs is a good way to do that. Just integrate it into much of what you talk about and examples of solving problems. And that really makes that connection to humans and the planet real. And so anyway, I really like the way he phrased that. Okay, so let's get into this a little bit of nuts and bolts of how we do accreditation. Here are our objectives. Again, we want to make sure graduates are prepared. We want to make sure that we are not in the way of stimulating improvement in technical education. We want programs to be unique. We want programs to be innovative. And when you look at the criteria, you'll see in there it's very, in many ways, non-prescriptive, because we want to allow this to happen. Because all schools are different. They serve different constituencies. They have different student bodies, geographical locations differ, of course, and so forth. So we don't want to, the last thing we want is all the programs to look alike. That, diversity in education is very powerful. We changed our criteria some years ago, actually in the late 90s, and we went from this idea of inputs to outcomes. And the idea of an input is, it used to be, I guess, before my time at least, program evaluators would show up on campus with a checklist, and they would just sort of check off numbers of credit hours and so forth, something that was very kind of black and white, if you will, and made their decisions based on that. Well, we have shifted that to what we call outcomes, because it turned out that one of our biggest constituents, being industry, was not satisfied with the products, what students were coming out of school with. And so they need to focus on different areas. They need to demonstrate competencies in different areas. And so we now look at outcomes. And so what we tell programs is, we're not going to tell you how to build your programs, but we're going to provide some guidance on the kinds of knowledge, skills, abilities students ought to have when they come out of your institution. And so again, programs have the ability to build their academic experience the way they think it's best for their student body, but they do need to demonstrate how they do meet our criteria and educational objectives. And since we switched over to this has taken on almost universal acceptance. We weren't the first to do this, but we were one of the early adopters of sort of the outcomes approach. And now I would say, in accreditation, almost every academic area you can think of really is focused on this aspect. The key thing is everyone's involved, and so everything's everything from the students, the facilities, the faculty, everything is focused on how to achieve certain program objectives. How does a program going to prepare students? I guess that's the key thing. Here's a couple of quotes I found on the internet talking about what's outcomes-based education, and it's as you can see here, focusing and organizing everything, okay, to make sure students are successful. And that's a pretty simple way of describing it, but it's absolutely true. Again, here's another example. You start with a clear picture. We call those objectives, and ABET terminology, we'll start talking about program educational objectives. And you want to know what students are going to be able to do when they graduate, and then you organize everything around that to support it. And so again, we're not going to tell you where to insert certain topics in mathematics or engineering sciences and so forth. You just need to build the program the way you think it's going to work the best and demonstrate that the students do have those capabilities when they graduate. Here's an example, and again, Ramesh will talk about this in more detail. I just wanted to give you a quick snapshot of what it looks like. Here's a very good example of a non-descriptive or non-prescriptive way of determining, if students are prepared. They need to be able to, in this case, identify, formulate, and solve engineering problems. Okay, everyone would say, yeah, that makes sense. Do it, right? Here's an interesting aspect that I did want to point out, though. It's not just about the science and the technology. It's also about cultural, social, environmental, and economic. And that's where the sustainability comes in. So the idea is that you not just, develop solutions to engineering, challenges or problems, but you have to do it in a way that takes into consideration all these other things that are really important. Because you can come up with the best solution, but if it's detrimental to the public health, or it's a heavy polluter, or whatever it is, then it's not going to be very successful. And you don't want students going down that road. You want them to be thinking about sustainability from the very beginning. And so that's something that's very explicit in our criteria, for example. We want students to communicate. Obviously, they can be the best technical experts in the world, but if they can't share that knowledge, they're not very useful in many cases. And then ethics and professional responsibilities, of course, really important. Again, back to this environmental, societal contexts. So back to the idea of sustainability. More and more as technology advances, engineers and STEM professionals have a greater responsibility and even greater opportunities, to influence our lives in ways that we can't even imagine. And we need to make sure people are thinking about the important things like ethics and professional responsibilities. All right, functioning on teams. Nowadays, everything's team-based. There's very little opportunity for individuals to work, in industry, for example. And so we want to start formulating that team-based approach early on in students' educational experience, and make sure things are collaborative and inclusive. So you're looking at people of all backgrounds and experiences and so forth. And then finally, ability to develop, conduct experiments. Of course, we all expect that to happen. And then, students need to understand that when they graduate, actually, it's not the end of their education. It's sort of the beginning in a lot of ways. One of the things that struck me when I graduated in my undergrad is how much I didn't know. I showed up at my first job, and I was familiar with some of the technologies and terms and so forth. There's so much to know that students really have to understand that it's a continuous process of learning. And of course, IEEE plays a huge role in that, in terms of the professional development and continuing education. Okay, so what do programs have to have before they can be accredited? They have to have a graduate, because they have to demonstrate that a student successfully completed the entire program, and that you can go back and show how students did succeed, and how programs were modified in order to improve their experience overall. For programs outside the U.S., we want to make sure that the institution is certainly legitimate and legal and all those kind of things. So there's a few technicalities there, but we want to make sure that we're not accrediting programs that shouldn't be accredited. And then obviously, programs have to meet the criteria and do that in accordance with our policies and procedures. All that information is public. It's on our website, by the way. You can look at it at any time. If you just click on the tab that says learn more about accreditation, you'll see all of that there. All right, we like evidence. We're all technical professionals. We like data, right? We make decisions based on data. The accreditation process is no different. We're going to look for evidence-based, evidence-based decision making, so that when you, you claim that your students have, completed certain areas and that they're knowledgeable and so forth. We want to make sure that we see there's evidence that the students do understand and have learned certain aspects or certain topics. Again, it's going to be tied back to each criterion, and the idea of this assessment of adult learning or student learning is critical to this whole process. I'm not going to have time to really go into that, other than the fact that I can tell you that assessment is kind of the key thing to set up properly when you decide to go down this journey of continuous improvement. If you remember that cycle of of planning, acting, and then checking, you can't check unless you have something to check, and the checking is going to come from the data that you're going to get through the formal assessment of student learning. And the key thing there is you don't want to assess everything. You want to be very strategic about how you build your assessment program. Otherwise, faculty, administrators, everyone will get overloaded, and you'll get inundated with data that it's maybe not necessarily helpful or useful. So understanding how to do assessment properly is critical, and we have a lot of training in that area that can help. Okay, continuous improvement. Again, that's kind of the foundation of the work that we do. Again, it's going to be systematic. We want to make sure it's documented and repeatable, because if it's documented and repeatable, as you make changes, then you can start to measure against those changes and how effective they were. Also, it helps if you have maybe new faculty come and go, that you're not starting from scratch every time, right? And so again, you want to have something that's you can kind of pick up and look at and refer to over a period of time. All right. The other thing is, as I mentioned before, accreditation is just part of continuous improvement. It's the verification step, right? And so that's sort of the idea. Same thing with our ISO visits. We have our ISO audits once a year. They come and they check and make sure we're doing what we say we're doing. And we're taking action when we find things that need to be improved. So accreditation is the same way. All right, so here's a long list. I'm not going to go through all these, but basically a continuous improvement process, you have to understand a lot about who you are, what your program is, who your constituents are, who your students are, what the mission of the institution is, and so forth. So once you have an idea of all of that and where you fit, then that makes building a formal process much more straightforward. Again, we have over 4,000 programs. They do this all the time, so this is not overly onerous. It's just something that you have to understand. What you're getting, who you are before you even get into the process of setting up a system like this. What happens in terms of the accreditation review? You apply to become reviewed, and so again, for those programs that are outside the U.S., you have to coordinate with whatever national or authority or accrediting agency is appropriate, because we want to make sure, first of all, that it's okay for us to come, and also that it's you're a legitimate institution with legal authority to issue degrees and so forth. You're going to do a self-study. That's the self-reflection, self-assessment I talk about, and you're going to learn a lot about yourselves, your program, going through this process. This is 90% of what the program evaluator really needs in terms of understanding if you're meeting criteria and so forth. And you're writing it, by the way, just for the program evaluator and team chair, nobody else. You want to keep that in mind as you prepare it. Then we visit campus. Typically, it's a 3-day process with travel on either side, but basically the idea there is to verify some of the items in the self-study, maybe ask some additional clarification questions, investigate, talk to students and faculty, staff, see how well they feel that they have access to resources, and do they have time to prepare lectures and research, all those kinds of things. We want to understand, again, holistically, how is the program doing? So we will come on campus and over that 3-day period, talk to people and review materials and so forth. All right, and then following on to that, there'll be a period of time where we'll go back and forth, maybe just to clarify some facts, ask additional questions and so forth if necessary, and then before the commissions decide on take a vote on the accreditation actions. Here's the timeline, and I just want to, before I really get into this, just tell you that it's stretched out over 18 months or 21 months, depending upon if you need a readiness review, and I'll talk about that here in just a moment. But this is not all in the institution. As a matter of fact, you'll see the sort of those blocks that are orange shaded. Those are the ones that the institution's involved with. The other things, ABET's doing our work. Okay, so typically if you're brand new to ABET, you'll do a readiness review, and this is a process that allows you to understand, are you going to be ready to be reviewed in the first place? You certainly don't want to send a team there if you're not ready. You know, the expenses involved in that, and the work that's required and so forth. We don't want to do that unless, again, programs are ready to do that. So we'll go through readiness review, and then typically by the end of January, you have to submit your formal request for an evaluation. Again, that's called an RFE, and that's on our website. You can see what that looks like, and then you'll be busy working on self-studies in the first part of the year. We come typically September through December, although that's flexible. This year it's been stretched out quite a bit because we're not able to travel, so we're having to do some things, do our reviews remotely, which is in many ways new to us. I'm not going to get into that because we're hoping that's just a one-off situation. Hopefully we won't have to do that again next year, but in any event, typically September through December is when we visit, and then February or April the following year, you'll respond to any inquiries we may have. Our commissions meet in July of every year. We're going to be meeting the week after next, actually, for this past cycle. And they'll have discussions. They'll make their final recommendations on and vote on actions. And then we, again, update our website in October, 1st of October, or right around 1st of October. And all the statuses will be released publicly. In the meantime, you'll get a letter, obviously, informing you of the decisions and so forth. And then potential actions on your part if you have any. All right, so how, our promise to you on how we're going to conduct business is in a couple different documents. One is the criteria, of course, so you'll know what to expect. Evaluators won't come there asking questions about things that are not related to the criteria, okay? We don't look for things outside the criteria. The criteria are for everyone's use. It's public. Again, you can look at it anytime you want. And we will only review against those criteria. So you'll see there's different aspects to it, of course, how the programs are managed and how the criteria fits into that, the assessment, how you're looking at student learning and so forth and so forth. The other document is called our APPM, referred to as APPM, the Policy and Procedure Manual, and that talks about sort of the rules of how we conduct the evaluations and what your options are in terms of applying and subsequent actions, if any. If there's an appeal that wants to, if we get to the point where there's an appeal that wants to be placed, how that happens and so forth. So anyway, those two sets of documents are really important for you to understand. And again, I'd encourage you to go look at them. They're public, and I think you'll find, it gives you a lot of insight into how we do business. Okay. Readiness review, I talked about that already. Basically, it's something that if you have no familiarity with us at all, we ask that you do one, and then it's sort of like a draft self-study, if you will. We review it to see if we have confidence that you're ready to meet, have a team review you. And if that's the case, then we will we'll proceed. There's 3 possible recommendations come out of that. Again, proceed. We'll go and visit. We'll postpone until you address certain issues, or we'll say, hey, you're not ready. So, go back and address these issues and resubmit next year. Okay, so that, again, helps both programs as well as us in terms of managing reviews. Request for evaluation, that's the actual application. Again, it's due by the end of January of each year for that cycle. And it tells who has to sign it. The transcripts, that you need to supply transcripts with that to demonstrate that you have graduates. And we ask that those are in English. And then we need to understand what the program's name is in English, because program name is going to determine what criteria generally that you're going to be reviewed under. So it's important for us to understand that. And certainly globally, programs can take on different names based upon where they're located. This is what a team looks like. At the bottom there, you'll see the team leader, what we call our commission, our team chair, who are our commissioners. So they have a dual role, if you will. And then we have our program evaluators, and I broke them down. There's 2 teams here, and I'm just showing 2 examples where on the left you'll have like one for civil, chemical, and mechanical engineering that will report to a team lead. And so those 4 individuals will show up on campus and do the review. And then there's a number of other people sort of behind the scenes that help in this process. We call them reviewers and editors. And the editors help ensure consistency to make sure that we have, for example, this year we had over 1,000 requests to review programs. At the end of the day, we want to make sure that all of those programs are treated equally and fairly, and that we don't have any imbalance, I guess, if you will, in terms of the types of actions that are determined at the end. And so we spend a lot of time doing that. Okay, so let's look at a particular team here and what happens. And visits, again, are going to take place in September through December. Let me just talk about what happens just at a very high level. We'll typically show up on a Sunday. And again, depending upon where we are in the world, these days can actually be modified a bit. But typically, we show up we travel Saturday. We're there on Sunday. We meet with the team. We do some initial review of materials. We'll go on campus. We'll talk with the institution or the program reps, the institutional reps, maybe do some lab tours, that type of thing. Then we get into our interviews on day one to look for perhaps clarifying some information that wasn't totally clear in the self-study. The team meets. We talk about what the actions team tend to look like. Day two, we do a little bit more of that, and then we prepare our draft statements before we leave in mid to late afternoon on day two. The one thing I would tell you there, actually, it's day three since we talk about day zero. One thing I would like to point out is I talk about team consensus here. Team consensus is important because part of our continuous improvement and our quality control is to make sure that all of the team members agree on the actions regardless of the program. Because the last thing we would want is one particular program evaluator to fixate on a particular aspect of the review that maybe isn't necessarily appropriate for whatever reason. And we want to make sure that the rest of the team is comfortable in guiding everyone in terms of coming up with a decision that everyone agrees on based on the evidence. So again, that's sort of our first level of quality control, if you will. The exec meeting is basically an opportunity to share with the chief executive of the institution and other institutional reps what the findings are for the individual programs. Each chair of the team chair makes introductory remarks, and then each evaluator can read their exit statements to the attendees. We talk about things like strengths, deficiencies, weaknesses, etc. And those are important, and I'll just touch on what those mean here in just a moment. But we also leave what we call a program audit form. So it documents what the team found, and then the program will use that as a basis for either clarifying information or providing additional information if something was missing. Here's the keywords that are important. You'll see these words: deficiency, weakness, concerns. These are terms that indicate there's some issues with the program. We also have a thing called an observation, which is basically friendly advice, and that's always welcome because, again, many of your reviewers are going to be coming from other institutions, and they can pass on best practices maybe in certain areas, and you can benefit from that. Deficiency is something that's not good. Okay, that means the criterion is not satisfied, therefore you cannot be in compliance, and then you have to take action to fix that. We have things called weaknesses, which basically says we think that's going to lead to problems down the road, and so we need to take action to address those things immediately. We have concerns, which are potential issues, again, maybe even farther down the road, but it's something that we would want to bring to your attention so that you can address them. And then an observation, again, is just something that we typically would program evaluator may share with you just as a means to, hey, something maybe you can do better, but doesn't necessarily affect the accreditation status. All right. After we come and review, you have 7 days basically to correct errors of fact. So if a decision or an accreditation recommendation is based on some error of fact, you want to make sure you can clarify that. We don't do extensive responses at this point in time. We have a due process period where that will happen. We do have an editing cycle that's important for you to understand because it's part of our commitment to consistency and quality. But we, the team chair will prepare a draft statement, and then we have 2 other levels of editing by very experienced executive committee members that will look across many programs, and we'll make sure that the recommended action is consistent with others that are being decided upon. And then we send a draft statement to the institution in January, and you can then go into this idea in this period of due process if you feel that there's something that's that you don't agree with and you want to bring it to our attention. And then the editing cycle again goes back. We go back through it again after any response, and we have a couple people again, experienced executive committees look at that to make sure that again that the result is appropriate. And then we have our summer meetings, we'll call them our July meetings, and then we will send you the institution on the result. Okay, and here are the accreditation actions that will result. The best result would be a next general review, which typically means that you're good to go for 6 years. There are instances where we'll ask for either an interim report or a visit. That's typically after a 2-year period. So if there's something that needs to be addressed in your program, you'll remain, your program will remain accredited, but you'll need to address those and provide us either a report, or we'll send out a small team to look at that one issue if necessary. The areas you don't want to get into are what we call show causes. So these are existing programs, and a show cause basically means show us cause for why we should not de-accredit, I guess, or terminate your accreditation. So that's something that's a small number, but that's an instance where again, programs are not meeting the criteria. And then for new programs, an equivalent would be a not to accredit, where we went in and looked at programs and they don't meet the criteria. So an NA is a not to accredit. All right, and then so again, depending upon the result of the reviews, it'll tell you whether what the different actions are. This is a table again that's available to you. And I don't want to get into a lot of detail, but I did want to kind of map how these findings then actually result in various accreditation actions. So a deficiency, for example, you're going to get basically a show cause or not to accredit, right? And so that's again an area that you don't want to get into. And then there's variations based on the other findings. Here's our duration. I mentioned typically every 6 years is what we do for general reviews, unless there's some exceptions. If programs want to align, if they have multiple programs that have been accredited different times and they want to align them, so you're going through review all at the same time with all the programs, then we can do that, and that would be something that would be an exception to the 6 years period, typically shorter than 6 years. And then we have the interim reports, which I mentioned, typically are 2 years. And the show cause as well. All right, consistency checks, important. We want to make sure everyone's getting a fair result and an appropriate result to the reviews. So we have 5 levels, what we talk about in terms of consistency checking, and this is what they look like. And I mentioned team chairs, the first level of quality control is at the very beginning when teams are on campus, making sure everyone's comfortable with the result of the initial recommendations. Then it goes up, we have editors, which again, experienced executive committee members. And then we have, in this case, the engineering accreditation chair, and then we have a consistency committee that meets in the summer to make sure, again, even more widely, that programs are receiving fair and appropriate actions in terms of their accreditation status. And with that, I'm just going to kind of wrap up and let you know there's lots of resources that you can access. We have a symposium every year. Unfortunately, we had to cancel this past year due to COVID. Next year, we're going to be doing it virtually. It will be in April. So look for an advertisement on that. We're not able to get together this next April. I don't think we'll be ready for that with travel restrictions and so forth. But nonetheless, we will be hosting it this April. It'll be a virtual offering. It'll be advertised on our website. Our website also has a lot of resources in addition to all the documents I spoke about. There's also information there that you can look at. We have some assessment workshops. So again, this idea of assessing adult learning is fundamental to our process, and so we offer assessment workshops on that and webinars on various topics as well. Finally, we have a institute that is focused on developing assessment leaders. These would be individuals from your institution that would come and really become experts in assessment, if you will. It's a week-long workshop, and then when they leave, then the idea is that those individuals would then turn around and teach others at their institution about assessment and best practice and so forth. Here's contact details for myself. I have a couple email addresses up there, and Kanta ready also. You can reach out to Kanta anytime. He's in your in Hyderabad, as I mentioned, so the same time zones and so forth. Those are his mobile numbers as well as his email address. So you're feel free to reach out to Kanta with any questions you may have, and he'll make sure you get in contact with the right individual. Either answer your questions or put you in contact with people back in Baltimore. Okay, so with that, I'll wrap up. And again, I want to thank everyone for their opportunity. Let me put this slide back so you can maybe get that information. But thank you for, again, inviting me to participate, and look forward to turning over to Ramesh.
So, Mike, thank you very much for a great introduction, in depth, about ABET and its functioning and reach around the world. At this moment, we have around 770 participants. We also have people watching this on YouTube channel and also IEEE TV at this moment. So we have been getting number of questions, and we will hold on to them till the end of the Ramesh session.
Okay.
And then we will address it accordingly, based on the question, we will direct it to the speakers here. So with that, I would like to request Professor Ramesh. Professor Ramesh is a professor of electrical and computer engineering and director and the lead investigator for Attract, Inspire, Mentor, and Support Students program. Dr. Ramesh served as the Dean of College of Engineering and Computer Science from August 2006 to August 2017. Earlier, he was the Professor of Electrical Engineering, CSU, Sacramento, where he was the department chair from 94 to 2006. Dr. Ramesh is the 2017 Vice President, IEEE Educational Activities, and served on the IEEE Board of Directors. He served as the 2016 President of IEEE Eta Kappa Nu International Electrical Engineering Honor Society. Dr. Ramesh has served ABET in multiple roles as Program Evaluator representing IEEE and is presently the ABET Board of Delegates. Earlier, he has served ABET Board of Directors from 2013 to 2015. Ramesh serves Institute of Electrical and Electronic Engineers, IEEE, extensively, including IEEE Educational Activities Board, IEEE Eta Kappa Nu, Electrical Engineering Honor Society, Board of Governors, IEEE E-Learning Library Educational Board, and IEEE Board of Directors. With that introduction, I will hand over to Ramesh for the deliberations. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Harish, and good evening to all of you in India. Good afternoon, good morning to the rest of you, wherever you are in the world. It's a great pleasure to be with you today. Again, as you heard from my colleague, Dr. Michael Milligan, CEO of ABET, I want to thank him. I want to thank Professor S.N. Singh, who is the chair of the IEEE India Council, the staff in the IEEE India office led by Harish, Sri, Danu, and Munir, for your efforts in putting this together. I was listening to Michael as he was speaking, giving his introductory remarks about the role of ABET and ABET's global engagement. And I thought it was appropriate that I begin my presentation with this image in front of you, which is of our late great president, Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam. Dr. Kalam was conferred with the Von Karman Award, which is the highest award in aerospace at Caltech. This was a few years ago in 2009, and I was very fortunate to meet him in person during that occasion. But what made it really special for me is that that summer I was visiting India, and I picked up a copy of his book, Wings of Fire, which in Tamil reads Agni Chiragagal. And I brought the book with me to this particular event. He noticed the book, and he came right up to me and started speaking to me as if I was a former student. Now, this was amazing to me, a former president of our country, the president of the largest republic, who is able to interact with you on a one-on-one basis. But what amazed me even more was his in-depth knowledge about engineering education and what he considered to be the quality of engineering education. It's a fascinating conversation, memorable conversation that I will forever cherish and remember. So with that introduction, I'm going to be speaking to you during the next hour or so about IEEE's role in accreditation, and specifically, we'll be getting into ABET accreditation criteria. So I'll be talking to you in depth about those topics. So here's what I have. I want to first thank Michael, again, as you heard from him. I also want to thank Jessica. Jessica Silvick is the Chief Operating Officer, as well as our CFO, who was very kind to share some of the material that I'm going to be using during my presentation today. Okay. So these are the topics that I intend to cover today. Begin with IEEE's role in accreditation, then talk about ABET accreditation criteria. I've got a few examples because I was monitoring the chat window, and a number of you have some really, really good questions about how do you do this in a practical level. So I have a few practical examples to share with you from my own experience as an educator in the California State University system. So hopefully that gives you some flavor as to how this process works on the ground. But before we even do that, Michael alluded to this in his remarks. This year, because of COVID-19, ABET has transitioned to a completely virtual process. In other words, in a given year, ABET does approximately 1,000 accreditation visits around the world. This year, all of the teams, all of the institutions that are being evaluated will host these visits virtually. Now, if you can imagine the time and effort that goes into this, it is pretty enormous, right? Taking something that is very hands-on, very face-to-face, and converting it to a process where you need to trust, but you still need to verify. And I'm so proud of ABET for leading the way, showing us how we do things. In some ways, I look at this opportunity with COVID-19 as a great opportunity for innovation, because I know that the world forever has been changed by what we've witnessed, and the world is going to be very different when we come out of it. And it's very comforting to know that we have organizations like ABET at the forefront of this process, leading the way when it comes to quality assurance, assuring industry, assuring employers, assuring students, assuring everybody about the need and the quality for good engineering programs, as well as programs in other areas that ABET accredits. Very good. So let me begin first by talking to you about IEEE's mission and vision. As you've heard during various remarks by Harish, by Professor Singh, as well as Dr. Milligan, IEEE's mission is advancing technology for humanity. And perhaps it is more relevant now than ever. And you think about IEEE, you think about our members who are creating these enormous technical contributions, standards, publications, conferences that IEEE produces in a wide variety of fields. You're an essential resource to the global technical community. And as a result, if you're a technical professional anywhere, it's not a surprise that we are the largest professional technical organization in the world that is present in over 160 countries and over 10 continents, all 10 continents. Our contributions to technology, as well as improving global conditions, is at the heart of what IEEE does, namely advancing technology for humanity. I show you this slide just because I think it is very critical to understand how IEEE's strategic goals actually align with our mission of advancing technology for humanity, driving global innovation through collaboration, enhancing public understanding, pursuing standards for practical application. The third bullet is very critical for me: be a trusted source of education services and resources, a trusted source. In other words, this is a body that you can come to if you're looking for lifelong learning, if you're looking for educational service resources. At the same time, our members span the gamut all the way from pre-university students, to continuing educators, to industry practitioners, and we want to provide opportunities for career and professional development while we attract pre-university students to our profession. All the while, we're inspiring a worldwide audience by building these communities. We are nimble, we're agile, we're advancing technical interests, informing public policy, and I cannot underscore this, expand knowledge for the benefit of humanity. A couple of weeks ago, I was listening to a panel discussion on the future of higher education, particularly with COVID-19. The panelists included Tom Friedman, so I think many of you know, the New York Times, Indra Nooyi, who's a former CEO of Pepsi. We had Michael Crow, who's the president of Arizona State University, and Joanne Beeney, who's the president of Trinity College. And one of the phrases that struck me in this conversation came from Tom Friedman. And Tom Friedman said, "It is a world that we're entering that is fused, fast, and deep." Let me repeat. A world that is going to be fused, fast, and deep. And we need to operate with speed, scope, and scale. Again, a world that is fused, fast, and deep, whether it's AI, Internet of Things, 5G, smart grid, whatever technology you're working on, things are very vertical and yet very horizontal. We're interconnected globally and we're working very hard. And we need to work even harder in order to deliver programs, in order to assure quality in this virtual setting, speed, scope, and scale. And the only way we can do it is with our values. You look at IEEE's values: trust, service to humanity, global community building, integrity, growth and nurturing, partnership. Without these values, you don't have IEEE. And without IEEE members, you don't have the organization. So I'm very, very proud to be a member of this organization. and proud that IEEE is a founding member of ABET, going back all the way to ECPD, the Engineers Council for Professional Development, back in 1932. Very good. So what is IEEE's role? As you know, it's a founding member. There are 36 member societies in ABET. And as a member society in ABET, we help set policy, we develop strategy. We're also responsible for creating and maintaining evaluation criteria. So when you think about IEEE's fields of interest, think about electrical engineering, computer engineering primarily, but there's so many fields of interest for which IEEE is either a lead society or a co-lead society. And during my presentation today, we will get into the nuts and bolts of how this works, how program criteria gets established, how it interacts with the general accreditation criteria, and how all of this comes together with the help, with the support of the member societies. So we have a number of member societies. Obviously, IEEE is the largest. You have ASME for mechanical, ASCE for civil, and so forth. I'll also talk about the structure of ABET, because some of the questions that I was seeing on the chat window related to the trust and verification part. In other words, ABET really believes in the continuous improvement process. That's part of our DNA. When we show up at an institution, when we show up to evaluate a program, we are there for one reason and one reason only. We want to help the program get better. And why do we want to do that? We want to do that so that the students are better prepared for professional practice. So we can assure industry, we can assure employers, we can assure the government that indeed these programs are fulfilling their mission, fulfilling the objectives that they set out to do. So this is very, very powerful. And the fact that it's being driven by volunteer member societies gives it credibility, gives it trust. So we'll talk about general and program specific criteria. And I'll also talk about program evaluators and commissioners, because they play an integral part in the implementation of the accreditation process. So these are some of the fields that IEEE is responsible for. Approximately 800 programs, that's just in the United States. Overall, if you look globally, that's over 1,000 programs. Everything from bioengineering. There was a question from Sri Lanka on the panel earlier today about how do we go about getting accredited for a bioengineering or biomedical engineering program. Again, that falls within the scope of IEEE as a member society. Biological engineering, computer engineering, laser optics, ocean engineering. It's a wide, wide range of fields. So member societies are responsible for three things. They're responsible for evaluation criteria development. They're responsible for assigning the program evaluators, and they're also responsible for completing the entire process. 2 weeks ago, I sit on the board of directors right now as the chair of the engineering delegation. So I represent all 32 member societies, including IEEE. Up until November, I was representing IEEE on the board of delegates, and then the board of delegates elected me to be the chair of the engineering delegation. So 2 weeks ago, we completed work on what is known as the consistency committee. So what does the consistency committee do? We look at the data from the visits that were done in 2019, literally all the programs that we visited, and we look at the shortcomings, and the members of the consistency committee go through the shortcomings individually, by institution, by program, to ensure that they're consistent. Consistent with what? With the definitions of the shortcomings, to ensure that there's consistency across the programs that are being evaluated in the institution and consistency across the commission. So ABET goes through multiple levels internally to assure students that the process is robust, and this is truly the gold standard. And as Michael mentioned to you, we're ISO certified, ISO 2018 certified, which is again a quality management organization. So why does IEEE do this again? 3 reasons. Number 1, educational criteria. So when you talk to anyone, I was a dean for a number of years, I've been a faculty member for all this time, I've been a department chair. When I talk to folks in industry, they want to know that our graduates are prepared for professional practice. They want to know that the graduates know more than what is just reflected in their transcripts. In other words, they need to be able to demonstrate the outcomes as a result of their education, no matter what degree they've earned. If it's an ABET accredited program, they need to be able to demonstrate tangible outcomes that are defined in our criteria at the time of graduation. IEEE clearly has an interest in this. If you're a society that's 400,000 members strong, our members come from schools, largely accredited programs, and we want to ensure that the future of engineering is in safe hands. Let me repeat that. The future of engineering is in safe hands. In the United States, we have a number of organizations. One of them is the US National Academy of Engineering. In 2008, the National Academy of Engineering came up with a publication called Changing the Conversation. And you can download it. You can go to nae.org and download Changing the Conversation. It says that few professions have such a direct and positive impact on human lives, and few make such a difference to humanity. Let me repeat that. Few professions have such a direct and positive impact on human lives, and few have such a direct influence on humanity. This to me is the reason why we engage in engineering, because ultimately we're talking about disciplines. No matter what discipline you are, you're dealing with climate change, you're dealing with global warming, sustainability, geopolitical issues, social issues. You're bringing all of that together to make a difference for humanity. So it's very important for us to have these competent professionals who are not only educated in their particular disciplines, but who come out with a broad perspective, who are able to apply in the context of society to help society. Last but not the least, professional development. The entire operation hinges on volunteers. There's approximately 300 IEEE members who serve as program evaluators, team chairs, commissioners. So they operate, they go to the various institutions to perform the visits, they develop criteria, they serve on committees, looking at the criteria, evolving disciplines. You may ask, what about new disciplines that are coming up? Recently, we approved criteria for cybersecurity engineering. Again, we work with other member societies. If there is a new discipline that has not yet been thought about, some member society comes up to ABET and says, this is something that is important for ABET to consider. We have a way of including the societies. On the average, there is about one new society that is joining ABET every year, and that is again proof of the power and the influence of ABET when it comes to global engineering education. Now, I understand in India, we have NBA and NAAC, and NBA criteria are modeled very much along ABET criteria. So if you look at the NBA criteria and ABET criteria side by side, I'm not going to do that today, and you will see that there's a lot of synergies between those. And in particular, tier 1 institutions from India are part of the Washington Accord. They're signatories to the Washington Accord, which means that as a signatory, we have a mutual recognition agreement. So graduates from NBA accredited tier 1 programs will be recognized by other Accord signatories, as Michael pointed out to you during his presentation. So hopefully I've convinced you about why IEEE is interested in accreditation and how it supports our mission of advancing technology for humanity. But if I didn't, I want you to just take a look at some of our colleagues right here. And I'm very fortunate and blessed to have worked with a lot of them. Ray, John, Mark, Frank, Francis, and Dean Barry Shoup, who's now Dean at Cooper Union. And if you listen to what they say, I'm not going to read all of this out to you. They're talking about how we can serve industry, how we can serve our consumers. John, for example, works for the National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health. That's a government organization. So he talks about IEEE accreditation being one of the best professional and personal development endeavors he's taken. Mark Law talks about a great benefits of the process, that it focuses on challenging each school to improve continuously. And I think that's an important point to make. This is not a ranking system. You are competing with yourself. You have a mission, you have a vision, you're serving a constituent body, you're serving your students. We want you to get better at whatever it is your mission is, so that you can accomplish the things that you said you were going to do in your program educational objectives. So I think it's really critical for you to understand that the purpose of accreditation, it is a collaborative process, it is a process of continuous improvement, it is intended to truly inspire and engage institutions and programs in the thing that we all care about, which is the learning of our students. And then as Barry says, Barry was at West Point for a number of years, retired as a general, he says that IEEE's engagement ensures the industry receives graduates who met an established base criteria that was verified with industry input. And Michael very eloquently showed you Indeed.com as a snapshot. So if you go to any job board and you look at what employers are looking at, they're looking for accreditation. They're looking for graduates who come from accredited programs, because that signifies something, right? It means that the degrees are relevant. It doesn't mean that the students stop learning, because as you'll find out with the criteria, it just means it's a beginning, and we're preparing graduates for lifelong learning as they go forward. Okay, so very quickly, IEEE, again, has about 1,000 programs. That's the pie chart that you see on the right. Roughly about 22% of them are international, about 800 in the US. And if you look at ABET as a whole, we had about 4,000 programs last year, again, about 20% international and the rest of them domestic. And let me underscore again, the entire process, the visit process at Michael is all happening virtually this year, right? So we're beginning this grand experiment. It's going to be a great learning experience. And I'm sure there'll be some wonderful learnings that we'll get as a result of this process that will help us going forward. Okay, so let's jump into ABET criteria. So before I do that, I think it's important for you to understand the structure of ABET. And without going into a lot of details, at a very high level, we have a board of delegates where the member societies, ABET's 36 member societies, appoint representatives. And then we have a board of directors, which is a smaller body that is responsible for strategy, that is responsible for the direction, that's responsible for global engagement for ABET, as well as looking at the financial issues. The heart of ABET is what we call the commissions. And as you can expect, there are 4 commissions: engineering technology, engineering, computing, applied and natural science. The representatives for these commissions, again, come from the member societies. They are the team chairs who show up at your campuses. They start out as program evaluators. The more experienced program evaluators are then recommended and selected to be team chairs. This is a peer-reviewed process. So it's very, very rigorous. It is not about who you know, it is about what you do and how thorough you are in your processes and how well trained you are in implementing those processes when you go out to the institutions. We also have area delegations. Members of the area delegations are appointed by the member societies. So for example, I was a representative of IEEE on the engineering area delegation up until 2019. And then the engineering area delegation elected me as the chair of the delegation. So now I sit on the board of directors. All of these delegates on the board of delegates are responsible for approving the criteria that come from the commissions. They're also responsible for approving changes to the criteria. They look at the ABET finances that are presented to the ABET board of directors. They look at all of the various things through what is known as the Accreditation Council. In the leadership of the Accreditation Council consists of the chairs of the commissions, past team chairs, chairs elect, and so forth. So it's really a very rigorous process that involves your peers. And if you ask who the ABET evaluators are, they come from industry, they come from government, they come from academia, right? So they come from all different sectors that ABET represents. And they represent really good gender diversity. ABET works very hard. We're currently working on policies for diversity, inclusion, and equity, because we believe that is very important in the pursuit of innovation, in the pursuit of quality assurance. Okay, let's talk about outcomes. And before we do that, no matter where you are in the world, no matter what program you're associated with, you care about students. And when the students enter your program, you have a number of structures in place. Think of each of these pillars as structures. So you're advising students, you have policies in place to recommend how they proceed from one year to the next. You have curricula, if you're an electrical engineer, mechanical engineer, civil engineer, manufacturing engineer, computer engineer, whatever discipline you're in, there is a set of programs, there is a set of courses that you have to take. And then you have faculty, teaching faculty, faculty who work in the laboratories, and all of these faculty who connect with the curriculum in order to deliver the program. We also have the facilities. You have laboratories, you have technology, and institutional support. You have deans, you have vice chancellors like Professor Singh. You have the entire institution that comes together to ensure that the learning outcomes are in fact demonstrated. So your students are going through this. Faculty are very interested in the outcomes because they're interested in learning how the students are actually learning. So it's not anymore the faculty showing up on stage and delivering a lecture. Just think back to about 3 months ago. We had faculty all over the world who were lecturing in classrooms, meeting face-to-face in rooms with students, working on labs and so forth. And like a light switch went off, all of a sudden we had COVID-19 and we said, all of you have to go to virtual modalities. Everything that you did face-to-face now has to go to virtual modalities. Faculty had to adapt. They had to think about the outcomes that the students were expected to deliver at the end of their program at the time of graduation. So how do we do that in virtual modalities? Not easy, right? It is not easy, particularly when you think about hands-on labs. But I'm really proud when I look at my colleagues around the world and the resources that they've come up with. It's not perfect. However, they're doing a very good job ensuring that all of these things, whether it is advisement, policies and procedures, the curriculum is being delivered, labs are being delivered, the facilities are working as they should, and the institutional support is there. That really is the heart of accreditation. In other words, you do this in such a way that you're introspectively looking at your processes, you're introspectively looking at improving how you do things so that you can make things better, not just for this generation of students, but for future students who come along. So it is not a big surprise that the ABET criteria sort of follow from the pillars that I showed you before. So if I go back to the previous slide, you see admissions, you see policies, you see curriculum, you see faculty, facilities, support, and students and faculty are deeply interconnected through these, and students in terms of demonstrating the learning outcomes, faculty in terms of working with the students so that they actually do that. The criteria holistically follow from that. So criterion 1 is on students. Criterions 2 through 4 talk about student outcomes, namely program objectives, the assessment of student outcomes, and continuous improvement, 2, 3, and 4. Criterion 5 is on curriculum. Criterion 6 is on faculty. 7 is on facilities and technology. 8 is on institutional support. And the policies and procedures are the glue that holds everything together. So you see how all of this comes together. And later on in the webinar, I will show you how there are resources on the ABET website where you can go in more detail. Today, we're just doing a 1-hour webinar. I want to give a shout out to the IEEE Kerala section. 2 months ago, I did a 3-part webinar series that they organized on ABET, where we went into more detail on assessment, more detail on continuous improvement. Incidentally, the IEEE Kerala section was just recognized with a large section award in IEEE. All of IEEE for their strategic academic engagement initiative. Very proud of them. Again, they're taking the lead to ensure that institutions are connected with industry, they're preparing their graduates for practice. Now let's jump into the criteria. The criteria are different for each commission. As you know, there are 4 commissions, ANSAC, CAC, EAC, and ETAC, and we've already talked about them. Revisions are typical. Normally, there are minor changes. There might be a word here, a word there. This year, we're very actively involved in looking at diversity, equity, and inclusion. I actually sit on a council. It's an ad hoc council created by the board of directors called the IDEA Council. It stands for Inclusion, Diversity, Equity Advisory Council. So we've come up with some definitions because before you start writing criteria, it is important for all of us to be on the same page. So we've come up with some working definitions, and we are vetting those working definitions with constituents. Right now, internally within ABET, very soon with our member societies, and eventually with the public at large before this becomes part of the criteria. So I'm giving you sort of a flavor as to how ABET criteria evolves. So normally you make minor changes. However, when you make changes such as the ones that I just described to you, we definitely put those out for public review and comment before we actually go through and implement them for a review cycle. So what are the criteria? By now, you should really know what the criteria are. There's 8 general criteria: students, objectives, program educational objectives, student outcomes, continuous improvement, curriculum, faculty, facilities, institutional support. Number 9 is program criteria. So if you're an electrical engineer graduating from an ABET accredited electrical engineering program, IEEE as a lead society has specific program criteria that every electrical engineering graduate needs to meet. For example, one of those might say that the students graduating from an ABET accredited EE program have to have courses in advanced mathematics, including topics such as complex algebra, advanced differential equations, partial differential equations. They have to be able to apply random and stochastic processes in their curriculum. Maybe they apply it in controls, maybe they apply it in communications. But this is something that IEEE as a society has decreed that every single graduate graduating from an ABET accredited EE program needs to satisfy. In the same way, if you look at computer engineering, they have similar program criteria that talk about discrete mathematics being something that needs to be covered in the curriculum, right? So these are again covered by the member societies. They're the ones that tell what criteria need to be involved. Okay. These are general criteria. And remember, there are 4 commissions. No matter which commission you're in, criteria 1, 2, 4, 7, and 8 are the same. In other words, students, program educational objectives, continuous improvement, facilities and support, institutional facilities and technology, and institutional support. These are all the same. So if you look at one commission and you go to the next commission, you'll see the exact same language verbatim. If you're preparing a self-study for accreditation, you'll see the exact same language. What's different? Criterion 3, student outcomes. Criterion 5, curriculum. Criterion 6, which is faculty. And program criteria, which is of course dependent upon the program, which is in turn dependent on the member society and specific to the commission, right? So the 5 that I listed above, 1, 2, 4, 7, and 8, are called harmonized criteria, and then 3, 5, and 6 are commission specific. So criterion 1, now I'm just going to go through the criteria rapidly in the next probably about 15 minutes or so. Criterion 1 talks about students. So when students come into your program, how are they admitted? What are the qualifications for students to enter your program? How do you evaluate students? How do you monitor their progress? What are the prerequisites? For example, if you're in electrical engineering and you have to take a course in advanced electronics, one would expect that you've done a course in circuits before you take a course in advanced electronics. And one would expect before you take a course in circuits that you've had a background in physics, particularly in electricity and magnetism, you have a background in differential equations. Why is it important? Because in circuits, we talk about DC circuits, we talk about transient circuits, we talk about AC circuits. We need to understand first and second order differential equations. We need to understand sinusoidal systems. We need to understand responses. And all of this is covered in differential equations. Sometimes you might have it as a core-requisite. So some programs might say, we want students to be taking differential equations at the same time as they take circuits. All of that is fine, but that is that institution's policy. How is that implemented, right? These are the things that are part of the criteria. How is that implemented? And then how do you award credit? What does that mean? We'll talk about a credit tower. Finally, graduation requirements. What does it take to graduate from an ABET accredited program? What does it mean when the student has satisfied the requirements? How do they know when they have met those requirements? That's criterion 1. Criterion 2 talks about program educational objectives. Now, when you hear this word, I want you to be thinking about your graduates years after graduation. There's no particular time frame, but typically programs look at 3 to 5 years after graduation. So they've gone through your program, they've graduated from your program, they're working in industry, they're working in government, they're probably an entrepreneur running their company, or they've gone to graduate school, whatever they may be doing. What are these graduates doing a few years after graduation? And these objectives have to be forward-looking, have to be aspirational, have to be things that are aligned with your institutional mission. In other words, you just don't go look at a different school and say, this looks like a great program objective, I'm going to make it my objective. You have to own the objective. It has to make sense. If you're in India, if you're in Bangladesh, if you're in Sri Lanka, Pakistan, the United Kingdom, wherever you are, whatever program you're teaching, your program educational objectives have to be aligned with the mission, the vision of your institution, and more importantly, they have to be based on your program constituents. So you ask, who are your constituents? Well, ABET gives you latitude to define who your constituents are. So they need to be published, it needs to be aligned, and it needs to be aligned with the ABET criteria. Here's something that's really critical. It needs to be up to date. What that means is if you say students are a constituent, industry is a constituent, employers are a constituent, or you might say parents are a constituent, are you consulting with these folks to ensure that they're appropriate? Are you ensuring that you're systematically looking at this in such a way that you believe that the program objectives are documented and they're effective? In other words, is it contemporaneous, right? We talk about being entrepreneurial. ABET really is a great driver of innovation. I'm a firm believer in that because there's nothing that says just meet the criteria. Go ahead, we want you to improve your program. We want you to use the criteria to be the best that you can be. You're competing with yourself. Remember, it's not a ranking system. We want you to be the best that you can be for your students, for your faculty, for your constituents. Okay. What are student outcomes? Now, student outcomes are the domain of the faculty. In other words, this describes what your students are expected to know and be able to do at the time of graduation. You see the second phrase here, knowledge, skills, and behaviors. I would add knowledge, skills, abilities, and behaviors. That's very, very important. Now, this doesn't happen overnight. When a student enters your program, however he or she may enter the program, as a transfer student coming from a different college, or as a freshman coming into your college, Everybody at the time of graduation would be expected to demonstrate these behaviors in order to demonstrate the appropriate outcomes. So previously, ABET used to have what are known as A through K outcomes. Now those outcomes have been renumbered as 1 through 7, and I'm going to go through one by one so that you understand what those outcomes are, because understanding the outcomes, I think, gives you a flavor as to what assessment is all about. So outcome 1 deals with problem solving, and in particular, ability to identify, formulate, solve complex engineering problems by applying principles of engineering, science, and mathematics. Outcome 2 talks about engineering design. Now, the words here are important. You're looking for solutions that meet specified needs with consideration of a number of factors: health, safety, welfare, as well as global, cultural, social, environmental, and economic factors, right? Complex engineering problems. Now, you might have almost missed that as I read that, but this is what we define by a complex engineering problem. Remember, it doesn't have to have all of the characteristics, but it has to have at least one of these characteristics. So it has to have wide-ranging or conflicting technical issues, no obvious solution, addressing problems that are not encompassed by current standards, involving diverse groups of stakeholders, including many components, involving multiple disciplines, having significant consequences, things like that. One example, I live in Los Angeles, and so my university, Cal State Northridge, has about 40,000 students. And it is a nightmare trying to find parking in pre-COVID days when you drive to campus. So our students in engineering and computer science decided to work to create an app that would predict the probability that there is a parking space available in a particular lot. So they got together sensors, they were looking at real-time data, GIS data, traffic data, and this was all consolidated into a hands-free app. So as you're driving to campus, if you have the app on, it would tell you the probability that you would find parking in a particular space. Now, this seems like, well, it's not a big deal, but it's a complex problem because it brings together many different disciplines. Again, an example of how different disciplines can interact to solve a problem, right? Ability to identify, formulate, and do these again. Please know that you don't need to include all elements of the definition, just one is sufficient, right? You don't have to include all of them. Second, student outcome, engineering design. Now, all the factors listed must be considered, even if all the factors do not influence a specific design. Now, we don't expect that to all happen in the culminating major design experience. You have a curriculum, you have labs, you have lectures, you have discussions, you have research seminars, whatever it is you do in your curriculum, we expect that you're going to be covering these factors at some point in the curriculum so that all phases of the design process are appropriately incorporated. Okay? Criterion 3 and 4 look to the outside, communications. We want graduates from our programs to be able to communicate effectively with a wide range of audiences. We also want them to be able to recognize ethical and professional responsibilities in situations and make informed judgments. Very important word, make informed judgments, which must, okay, again, pay attention to this, which must consider the impact of engineering solutions in global economic, environmental, and societal contexts. I'll explain that with an example in a minute. So when you talk about the range of audiences, think about your students again. So at a minimum, when you say range, you've got to have at least 2 audiences. So perhaps the students are writing an article for a professional journal. In my college, when I was dean, we had students working with industry. A lot of the projects were industry sponsored. So they had to make reports, they had to present their projects to industry sponsors. You might be working with different professions. We have students who work on projects in robotics and assistive technology. They interact with doctors and nurses and healthcare professionals. We have students who are working with venture capitalists on startup projects. There's a lot of projects on energy research and sustainability, solar, photovoltaic, and so forth. End users, faculty, K through 12. Maybe they're teaching the next generation of teachers. No matter what it is, ABET doesn't tell you who your audiences are. We just ask that your program gives opportunities for students to communicate with a range of audiences, okay? This to me is, again, at the core of why we're all interested in this. An ability to recognize ethical and professional responsibilities in engineering situations, make informed judgments. Now, please keep in mind, not every engineering situation requires that all these contexts be considered. However, the consideration of the impact as the judgment is made is the key. And the documentation of that is important. And we'll go through this with some examples, how we can do this in an effective way. 5 and 6 deal with teamwork as well as the ability to conduct experiments, analyze and interpret data, and use engineering judgment to draw conclusions. So we know that engineering is a team sport. We know that we are looking for students, and ultimately when they leave to practice in industry or they go to graduate school, wherever they are, to be leaders, to create a collaborative and inclusive environment. What does that mean? That means that you take into account different points of view. No matter who you are, no matter what you look like, no matter what language you speak, no matter what culture you come from, no matter what sexual orientation you may have, regardless, right? There is an equitable field where everybody is treated fairly, everybody has the same opportunity to participate so that you're able to collectively, collaboratively advance the nature of the project, right? And then finally, an ability to apply and acquire and apply new knowledge as needed using appropriate new learning strategies, right? Now, when you think about teams, shared leadership is important, tools and techniques are important, inclusive and collaboration, and I'll show you some ways in which these are measured. For example, in our curriculum, the teams meet with their industry partners, their sponsors, they videotape the teams. The students actually critique one another. Some teams form companies. In our mechanical engineering program, one of the projects is a Formula car. There's 50 students on the team, including students from business, including students from materials, manufacturing, computer engineering, electrical engineering. So it's a very interdisciplinary project. And so they run it like a company. There's a CEO, there's a COO, there's a CFO, there's a hierarchy. They communicate. Very, very interesting to see how they do it. They also look at tools to measure these. And then they use feedback in order to improve the process as they go along. So these are some techniques that we use. Ability to do experiments. Again, we have labs and experiments throughout our curriculum. Engineering is a hands-on profession, as is computing, as is applied and natural science, as is technology. So I think it's really, really important that our students coming out are prepared to practice, because as a faculty member, that is something that my clients, if you will, my industry clients would always ask me, we want to make sure that your students are ready to hit the ground running, right? Please let us know that your students are ready to hit the ground running, that they're curious, they're thoughtful, they're inquisitive, and they're able to apply what they've learned in the classroom in a practical setting. Because your learning doesn't stop. Well, there's a reason why we call it commencement, right? At the time of graduation is when your learning really begins as you go to graduate school or you go to different industries. Ability to acquire and apply new knowledge. We want every student to take initiative for their own learning. We want them to take appropriate learning strategies. Now, this could include courses, research. IEEE, again, has a very vast, extensive network of standards, publications, conferences. If you go to ILN or IEEE Learning Network, you can probably find anything under the sun that is under the scope of field with IEEE. It's meant to be broad, and don't underestimate the role of mentors, because we all have mentors, our teachers, our guides, our fellow engineers, our students. I've learned a lot from my students. My area is fiber optic communications. And I'm proud to say that almost everything that I did as a graduate student for my PhD is totally and completely obsolete, as it should be. That's the pace of change, right? But I haven't stayed static. I've moved on. I've started working on different fields, but that is just a beginning for me to apply what I've learned in my curriculum to my future education. One of the questions that comes up for institutions and programs is, should we use these outcomes verbatim? The answer is, you've definitely got to make sure that the outcomes are covered. So if you don't use them verbatim, if you change it in some way, make sure that the intent of those outcomes is still reflected in whatever outcomes you have. You can have more outcomes from 1 through 7. Totally fine. However, whatever outcomes you have need to be assessed, need to be used, and the information from the assessment needs to be used to improve your program. In particular, since I'm from electrical engineering, I want to mention this for electrical and computer engineering programs. Let's say I'm a program evaluator. I am, and I used to visit programs. You have 2 programs under a department of ECE, and you have students in the program who are taking classes, common classes, data structures, programming, circuits, electronics, etc. That's common to both electrical engineering and computer engineering. When you do your assessment, when you do your outcomes data, that needs to be disaggregated by discipline, because we want to know how each program is making improvement. So that's important to keep in mind. So the assessment and evaluation is used for continuous improvement. Now, there are three aspects here. It needs to be used regularly, it needs to be appropriate, and it needs to be documented, right? And furthermore, it needs to be systematically utilized as input for continuous improvement of the program. We could have a complete separate webinar just on continuous improvement, so I'm not able to get into more details on that, but just know that this is an integral part of the ABET accreditation process. This is where it all comes together to see how it's working, how your students are actually demonstrating the outcomes, and how the program is using the information to make itself better for its students, for its constituents. You can also use other available information. You might do surveys. You might talk to your partners and find out what they think. Subjective techniques. You could use quantitative tools. Now, a couple of examples we'll go through shortly. Curriculum is very commission specific, right? Because obviously engineering is different than technology. That's different from applied science. That's different than computing. Now, what the curriculum does is that, and I'll talk about engineering because that's my area right here, EAC. It specifies subject areas, but it does not prescribe specific courses. It only tells you what the content should be, and the content should be consistent with the program outcomes. It should be student outcomes with the objectives, and ensure that the students are prepared to enter professional practice. So what are the requirements? A minimum of 30 semester credit hours of college level mathematics and basic sciences, a minimum of 45 semester credit hours of engineering topics that are appropriate to the program, consisting of engineering, computer science, design, utilizing modern engineering tools, and then a broad education component that complements its technical component. In a lot of our programs and institutions, this is what we call GE, or general education. So it could be liberal arts, it could be humanities, it could be writing, it could be art, it could be media, whatever it is. But this is something intended to make a holistic program so that the engineering graduates really understand the impact of their solutions in society and so forth. And finally, a culminating major engineering design experience. Two very, very important points. Number one, it incorporates appropriate engineering standards, right? And you ask who sets the standards? The member societies do, right? The member societies do. So IEEE has standards, multiple constraints. It's based on the knowledge and skills acquired in earlier coursework. What if you have a new discipline that doesn't have standards? Well, maybe the standards are evolving. Again, incorporates appropriate engineering standards. That has to be incorporated in the design, and that is something that evaluators look for. Okay. So when we look at college level mathematics, in general, we expect that to begin with introductory calculus. So pre-calculus courses are not part of this. So you begin with calculus, and depending upon the program, you might go all the way to advanced calculus, differential equations, and so forth. Similarly, when you look at engineering topics, computer science is part of engineering topics. So if you're doing a course on structured programming as part of your curriculum, that is in fact a part of your engineering topics. Your engineering science, statics, dynamics, circuits, mechanics, systems, communications, microprocessors, all of these will come into your engineering topics right here. Again, all programs now have the same minimum credit hour requirements for engineering topics. Now, we can't get into the weeds here, but in the United States, we have something called the CFR, which stands for the Code for Federal Regulations. And the Code for Federal Regulations essentially talks about what a credit hour means. So without getting into too much detail, if you're on a semester system, 1 credit hour simply means that you have 1 hour of direct instruction, and the student is expected to spend 2 hours outside the classroom, approximately 15 weeks. Okay, so if you're keeping track of this, let's say you're offering a 3-credit course, right? 3-credit course. A 3-credit course would meet 3 times a week, 3 hours a week, face-to-face or virtually, whatever modality they may be in. And then the students would be expected to spend approximately 6 hours a week outside of that. So 45 hours directly and about 90 hours outside of that at work. That constitutes a 3-credit course. Then you can extrapolate that for labs, you can extrapolate that for discussions and so on and so forth, right? So it's important that we all approach definitions from the same standpoint. Now, this is a major engineering design experience. Again, there are commission-specific requirements concerning the makeup of faculty of an accredited program. We'll talk about those in a minute. We heard at the beginning, Professor Singh was talking about the student-faculty ratio. ABET is not prescriptive. ABET doesn't tell you how many faculty you need to have, etc. You decide how many faculty you need that is sufficient and competent to A, cover all the areas in your program, and B, be able to advise your students. Let's say you have 1,000 students and 3 faculty. That doesn't seem like a reasonable mix because you have way too many students for those 3 faculty to be able to teach the courses, advise the students, and do all of the service and governance that they need to do. So we look for reasonableness, but we leave it up to the institution to demonstrate what is sufficient and what is competent when it comes to this. Appropriate qualifications. So they need to be qualified in the areas in which they're teaching. We look at their qualifications in terms of their research, in terms of their publications. How are they engaging the students? How are they developing processes for evaluation and assessment? Remember, outcomes is the domain of the faculty. So without the faculty, you're not going to get the outcomes assessment done. Without that, you don't have continuous improvement. So we look at a number of factors: education, diversity of backgrounds, engineering experience, their effectiveness as a teacher, ability to communicate. So it's not critical, you may be the world's best expert in robotics, but if you're not able to communicate that to your students, you're not very effective as a teacher. Your enthusiasm for developing more effective programs, your level of scholarship. Are you active in the discipline? Do you know what is going on in the discipline in terms of changes? Are you participating in professional societies such as IEEE? If you're a civil engineer or even an electrical engineer, are you interested in licensing? A lot of professions require you to be a licensed engineer. So these are all some of the factors that we look at. Facilities, we look at classrooms, offices, labs, libraries, equipment, etc. Are these adequate? Are they being refreshed on a regular basis? Are they being maintained? Are they safe? Are they providing an atmosphere conducive to learning? And then the last criterion, which is criterion 8, which is all about continuity and quality. So the leadership of the institution, all the way from the president, the head of the institution, to the dean of the college, the department head, the faculty, how does this work? Is there good communication about resources? What happens when the program enrollment goes up? How does the program get additional faculty lines? How do they get new equipment? How do they maintain their labs? How do they get more space? All of these questions come under the support question under criterion 8, okay? And finally, are they able to attract and retain professionally developed and qualified faculty? Okay, so I'm going to talk next about program criteria briefly. Program criteria, again, are based on curricular topics and faculty qualifications. These are defined by the member societies. So for electrical engineering, computer engineering, anything that is in IEEE's fields of interest, IEEE is responsible for developing the program criteria. And ultimately, these get reviewed and approved by the commission. They get reviewed and approved by the board of delegates before they're published. Okay. Now, I'll go through a couple of examples before we close up, because I think it's always good to give you a flavor of how all of these accreditation criteria actually work in practice. And since I can only share with you information from my own institution, because ABET accreditation is a confidential process between the institution and the programs that are evaluated and ABET, I'm not at liberty to share with you places that I visited and places that I know of. I'm just going to share with you examples from my program and my institution, because these are things that I do and I can share with you. So focusing on educational objectives. So you get your input from your constituents, your faculty reviews them, they recommend some objectives. If there are no further changes, you once again review them with your constituents, you publish them. But let's say your constituents want to change something on your objectives. If additional changes are recommended, then you make those changes. Again, you get them reviewed by the faculty. Again, you make changes. Once again, have your constituents look at it. And lastly, you publish it, right? So the process goes through cyclically, and you can do this periodically. You don't have to do this every month, every year. You can say we do this every 3 years. We go back and look at what our objectives are, if they're still relevant, if they're still contemporaneous, and they still make sense. If you remember at the beginning of my talk, I said program objectives are statements that describe what graduates are able to do several years after graduation in alignment with the mission of the institution, in alignment with the vision of the institution, in alignment with the needs of these constituents. That's why we're having them reviewed, right? So this is the vision statement for my university, California State University at Northridge. So like all universities, we're a public university. It's the largest public university in the United States. Over 500,000 students, 23 campuses. My campus has about 40,000 students. The College of Engineering and Computer Science has about 4,000 students. And I served as dean of that college for over 11 years. So when you look at Cal State Northridge, it talks about graduates being vanguard leaders for this century. I just highlighted a few things. Committed to sustaining democracy, proficient in applying technology, securing a humane world community, sustaining the bounty of the earth. So no matter what program you graduate from, business or arts or commerce, music, whatever program you graduate from, this is the university's vision, right? Now let's look at the program educational objectives. Again, remind yourself what the objective is. Broad statements that demonstrate what your graduates are able to do many years after graduation, right? So this is the electrical engineering program objectives. It says the EE program at Cal State Northridge prepares a diverse group of graduates for lifelong careers in the field that will allow them to make productive contributions to society, find personal satisfaction in their work. To accomplish this, they'll meet the following objectives. And it talks about having professional careers and continuing their professional development through their careers. Again, we talk about impact, we talk about society, we talk about productive contributions, all of which are aligned with the mission of the institution, okay? Give you another example. This is civil engineering. So civil engineering is very big on licensure. So they want to ensure that they're preparing the graduates for entry into professional practice of engineering, and also recognizing that civil engineering is a people-serving profession. When you hear that, you hear serving community. Then it talks about objectives. It says, addressing the needs of society, lifetime of learning and leadership, continue their further studies in engineering, develop creative solutions to project challenges that are cost-effective, environmentally sensitive, right? Next, I'm going to show you how these objectives are reviewed by the constituents, right? So we have a number of constituents, and we have an industry liaison council. This is at the programmatic level. We have students in the program, they're going through the program. We have our alumni, we have employers, and at the college level, we have an industry advisory board, which is made up of CEOs and vice presidents of various companies that hire our graduates and then work with the university. So in the College of Engineering and Computer Science, we have a number of outward focused programs, a program called TechFest. TechFest is an annual career fair. It happens twice a year, where a lot of companies come on campus to recruit our graduates. So it's like a trade show. That's literally what you would see there. Companies come and set up booth, but we also have alumni doing information sessions, talking about what it means to be an industry professional and how their education prepared them to be the professions that they are. Can you hear program educational objectives? I'm having alumni come back to the university talking about what it means to be an industry professional and how their education prepared them to be who they are in their industry. That's one way by which we can measure PEOs. Showcase. A project showcase is when our capstone design are demonstrated to an audience that consists of industry, the public, and their peers. Industry actually judges it. We have different rubrics that they come and judge, but our students demonstrate all of their it's not called capstone, it's called a culminating design experience. They demonstrate their projects to industry. Again, this is another way by which we look at assessment. Last but not the least, we have an internship program, which is not mandatory, it's voluntary, honors co-op, companies pay to participate, and design clinics. So what's a design clinic? So if you come to the College of Engineering and Computer Science at Northridge, I established a program when I got there as dean that allowed companies to come and propose a problem, right? And remember, a problem doesn't really fit nicely into one definition. A problem doesn't come wrapped in a package that says, this is an electrical engineering problem, and you're going to apply IEEE principles to solve it. A problem is a practical problem that somebody wants solved. We put a team together, interdisciplinary team, to solve it. The funding comes from the company. The students actually work on the project. They deliver a product, a process, whatever it might be to the company. So this is how we inculcate these learnings through our programs. Now, if you think about constituents, I said students, employers, alumni, IAB, which is the Industry Advisory Board, ILC, which is at the department level, and then graduate school. About 20% of our students go to graduate school. So we assess all of that. These are our students. This is our Industry Advisory Board. That's a meeting that I'm chairing when I was dean. This is the alumni information session. This is graduation. So I'm with one of our graduates, Paula Osuna, who's a graduate in computer science. I didn't mention to you the AIM Squared program that I lead, Attract, Inspire, Mentor, and Support Students, was recognized as a baccalaureate degree program of the year last year by Excellencia in Education. It's a minority serving program that attracts first generation students, first in their family to go to college, prepare them to be engineers and computer scientists. Really, really proud of them. And Paula is one of our graduates from that program, right? But again, thinking about objectives, these objectives have to be reviewed periodically by your constituents. Here's TechFest again, and you can see how this works. Students are going through, talking to the various companies. We prepare the students, so students know how to prepare to write resumes, how to prepare for an interview, how to talk to an industry employer. I have a list of how-tos that we actually do as part of our curriculum. They learn about ethical and professional responsibilities, and they talk firsthand. We actually encourage everybody from freshmen to juniors to seniors to go through the curriculum and do this. This is the entire industry advisory board meeting with us. Again, constant feedback, continuous feedback that we use in our process to improve our process. So I hope I've given you a flavor as to how this works within our program. Obviously, I'd be happy to talk to you in more detail offline, and you can contact me. I'll have my contact information coming up in a little bit. Student outcomes. There's a lot of aspects that go into student outcomes. Obviously, the courses are part of it. And this is just a sample that shows you how a number of different attributes go into this, both technical, ethical, teams, communication skills, etc. And you can do the assessment either at the course level or at the program level. And most programs will do both, because you can't completely assess the program outcomes by just doing one or the other, right? And you'll have copies of these slides later, so you can look at them. So if you're teaching a particular course, you cannot possibly cover all the topics related to that course in that assessment. Similarly, you can't cover all assessments related to program objectives in program assessment. So you have to have a combination of course assessment and program assessment to make your assessment process work. Okay. So I took one example, teamwork, which is one of the student outcomes, ability to function effectively on a team, and show you how this works. At the heart of outcomes assessment is what we call performance indicators. Now, at the top of the pyramid is the program objectives. So the program objective is that graduates will solve complex problems and participate in a team-based environment. The outcome that supports this objective is the ability to function effectively on a team. Now, what does that mean? It means that they're able to make contributions, they take responsibility, they value other viewpoints. How do you measure this? Well, there are 4 performance indicators. The individual is able to research and gather information. They communicate well with others. They're able to fulfill the duties of the team members. They do things on time. They're responsible, they're accountable, they're collaborative, they're resilient. They share in the work of the team. They listen to others. They're not talking all the time like I am right now, right? So they listen to others. So these are all the performance indicators. Then we take the performance indicators, this 4 performance indicators, and put a rubric together that defines a scale. And the scale could be 1 to 4, 1 to 5, but really, this is something that the faculty define, right? Who defines the rubric? The faculty define it. So they say if somebody does not collect information that's unsatisfactory, if they collect a great deal of information that's exemplary, right? This is kind of the scale. But the faculty define this, they measure it, they collect data, and they collect this across the various courses that they do the assessment. So they come up with an average. And if you look at the 7 outcomes, I just wanted to show you how it looks like for our electrical engineering programs. So here's the 7 outcomes. And we use a mixture of course embedded assessment, we use lab reports, we use communication skills, students' abilities to recognize professional ethical responsibilities. So we look at a lot of different factors to do the assessment. If I showed you a course map, if you have a sharp eye, you'll notice on top it shows A through K. A through K really covers the old outcomes. Now it covers 1 through 7, right? And this is mapped to the various outcomes. I got a note saying I need to wrap up shortly. I'll do that in a minute. So this is how we map the various outcomes to the courses. And then finally, we bring this all together by looking at the students and putting it together in a way that makes sense for the faculty. So the faculty understands how this all makes sense and how they can improve the program continuously. You can gather this data again, you can coordinate it, you can do this electronically and ensure that it's documented so that the evaluator, the people coming in, are able to demonstrate and see that this works. That pretty much concludes what I was going to share with you. There is a lot of information we covered today. I knew I was giving you, in the US we call it drinking from a fire hose, but please visit this website, which has a 6-part education series prepared by ABET. These are videos that you can access on all aspects of assessment, that you can actually utilize the definitions, etc., that are utilized. You can definitely read these at your own convenience. You can view these webinars. My contact information is on the slide. Also, many of you on this call are international. So if you're interested in international programs, Sherry Hirsch is our manager for international accreditation. Please feel free to contact her at sherryhirsch@abet.org. So with that said, I'm going to stop my presentation and turn it over to the team in India, Harish, and the rest of you for a Q&A with both Dr. Milligan and myself. Thank you again very much, and a very warm good evening to all of you. Thank you.
Thanks, Professor Ramesh. Thank you for the insightful talk on the accreditation criteria. I think you have answered a lot of questions already, but what we have done is we have compiled a few of them. As time permits, in the next 10 minutes, we should be able to cover. If we are unable to cover during this time, we should prepare a written question and answers and post it to either IEEE TV, or we should share it with the participants as we go along.
Harish, if I may, since I just went through an hour, I'm hoping you direct the first question to Michael.
No, let me ask the first question to Professor S.N. Singh. He's been silent for a while now. Why do higher learning institutions in India, IISc and other IITs, generally don't go for accreditation? Professor S.N. Singh, this question to you actually. Is he still listening or?
Hi, Harish. Professor S.N. Singh is not
okay.
winner.
Fine. Then it goes to Mike. If Mike, can you answer this question?
If you don't, sure I can. Just would you restate the question real quickly?
Yeah. Why do higher learning institutions in India, especially IISc and other IITs, generally don't go for accreditation?
Well, I don't know the specific answer to that because I've not engaged with people from those institutions, so I can't speak on their behalf. But I do think individual institutions, make commitments for different reasons. Perhaps they feel that, the way that their programs are set up, that they don't feel there's the value. Obviously, I talked about value proposition earlier in my talk, and perhaps they don't share some of those value propositions. I would say that one of the things that I know in the U.S., for example, all institutions and many that would be considered world-class institutions in engineering, computing, and so forth do commit to accreditation in the United States. So why is that true in India? I guess I don't know. That's probably the best question is to ask them or someone who represents them.
Yeah. What I will do is I will take this on myself and ask the directors of IISc and few IITs and try to get an answer from them. So the second question is, should my institution have an NBA accreditation before applying for ABET? What is the eligibility for an institution to participate in an ABET accreditation?
So we do have certain requirements. This is a good question. Actually, Kanta can follow up on some of these with individual institutions. Tier 1 institutions that have to be autonomous, that's important because part of the continuous improvement process is that the institution programs have complete control over the program, so they can make adjustments and so forth to them. We highly encourage NBA in India, for example, to review your program, to accredit your program. We feel strongly that national and regional accreditation is extremely important to programs for a lot of different reasons. Okay, I think ABET is a complementary review of that. And so again, as I mentioned in my earlier talk, one of the requirements that would be fulfilled would have to be coordination. And we'd have to ensure that NBA didn't object to us coming to review it. But I would highly encourage you to seek NBA as an option.
Okay.
All right,
so the next
if I can quickly chime in. If you go to the ABET website, there is a detailed section that talks about requests for evaluation. And it is a process by which institutions that are seeking ABET accreditation essentially create like a small self-study, without going into a lot of detail. And that gets reviewed internally with an ABET. And then if you're ready, and if you satisfy the criteria in there, you're invited to apply for accreditation. And obviously, as Michael mentioned, Kanta Reddy is our adjunct ABET director on the ground in Hyderabad, and he can certainly talk to any individual program or institution that's interested in learning more about it. Thank you.
Next question is, how do I become an ABET program evaluator?
Well, let's make an assumption that you're an IEEE member for starters, because you have to be you have to belong to one of our member societies. So if you're an IEEE member, then what you would do is you would come to the ABET website. There is a tab there about program evaluators. There is an opportunity for you to apply. There's also information on requirements, because each society has slightly different requirements in terms of membership grade, experience, etc. So I'd highly encourage you to go to the website, look at IEEE's requirements, and then if you feel like you meet those requirements, then you can actually complete the application online. And then IEEE, their Educational Activities Committee, will review them towards the end of the year, and then then they forward the candidates to us, to ABET headquarters, and then we contact them with respect to training, which typically happens in anyway from April through June each year.
Harish, can I just add the IEEE
Yeah.
flavor to that curry that Michael started to cook? So IEEE, again, as Michael mentioned, is the society that you'd apply to. So if you go to the IEEE Educational Activities Board, in particular, there's a University Resources Committee that has two committees, Committee on Engineering Accreditation Activities, CEAA, and if you're a technology evaluator, Commission on Engineering Technology Accreditation Activities. So it requires you to be a senior member of IEEE. We look at your educational qualifications. We look at your experience. You could be from industry, you could be from academia, and you submit the information that is required. These two committees then evaluate the applications that come in. I have to tell you that in a given year, we get well over 300 to 400 applications from IEEE evaluators. So that committee works very, very hard. That committee is made up of, the engineering committee is made up of almost 25 volunteers, and they go through very carefully. They look at diversity because, again, we're a global accrediting organization. We want to really train and bring in evaluators from all over the world. We look at diversity, gender diversity, equity. We look at all of those considerations and bring people into the pool. The other thing that's really critical about IEEE is training, and all the member societies do it, but I'm proud of what IEEE does, because we have a mentoring program. Before you ever go on a visit, you'll be paired up with a mentor, and he or she will work with you to ensure that you're absolutely ready to go. On that very first visit you go, if you're the first time visitor, you'll be paired with a more experienced visitor who can guide you and take you along. So IEEE really believes in bringing people along. I encourage you very strongly to look at our nomination process, because again, it's important for IEEE to build this pool of evaluators, particularly as the number of programs is growing. Thank you.
So the next question, in the interest of time, I'm skipping few. How to evaluate the quality of teaching, as largely it depends on the quality of students. Okay, it's a chicken and egg issue perhaps. And Ramesh, to you.
Absolutely. And I want to do the chicken and egg flip on you, Harish, and say, it's not the quality of teaching that we're interested in evaluating, it's the quality of learning, right? It's about the demonstration of student outcomes. So, what ABET cares about are those 7 outcomes that we talked about, and how the graduates at the time they leave are in fact being prepared. We expect institutions to be different. We expect programs to be different. We expect them all to satisfy the outcomes at the time of graduation. So it's not so much an evaluation of one's teaching, although institutions and programs might award somebody for being an outstanding teacher. This is truly a collaborative effort, right? We want faculty to work together. None of us, show up in the classroom with a tool chest that says, I'm the best professor in the world. We've learned our craft and skills by working with generations of students, God forbid, right? Who've learned from us, somehow learned from us, despite our foibles. So my point there is, ABET accreditation is about looking at the quality of learning. And I go back to what I said during my remarks. It is not about being better than somebody else. It's about being better than yourself. You're competing with yourself so that you improve. And at the end of the day, your program is the best that it can be at any given time for the students that you're graduating from your programs. I hope that I did justice to that.
So we have only 30 seconds. I will just ask you the last question and then we have to wrap up. So what's the difference between those who graduated from ABET accreditation programs and those who graduate without an ABET accreditation?
Well, I think in general, my view on that would be, I think again, it's this idea of having confidence in the students' exposure to certain knowledge, skills, and abilities that we help guarantee. If you hire students from non-accredited programs, I guess you don't really know what you're getting per se. I think that's the biggest difference. And you know, because we have established such a standard along with our partners around the world, there's 20 partners I talked about and others, you know, coming from a non-accredited program is really doing a disservice to students. And I would never advise a student to go to an institution that doesn't have accredited programs if there's an option to do the other, because it just, again, it opens up so many more doors for the students. I think you're doing a disservice to the student if you don't have, can't provide that.
So thank you. We are just over the hour. We still have 50 more questions. We can't cover all of them.
Can I make one comment, please? For any specific questions about accreditation, ABET accreditation in India, please reach out to Kanta. His contact details were there, and he will answer any and all detailed questions. Okay.
Yeah, even IEEE India office can make those connections as well.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you so IEEE as well, Harish.
Yeah, so certainly. Okay. So I don't have enough words to thank everyone. IEEE India Council for its guidance and Professor Rajan Singh's personal involvement in this program, and all the section chairs across South Asia. In fact, they are the ones who made it their mission to promote it in their respective sections and countries, and also bring the administrators of those countries onto this program as well. And speakers, without your total dedication, this program would not have come to where it has come. Getting up so early, Professor Ramesh and also Mike, you know, that shows the commitment. So Ramesh just said he is touching 60 years are his celebrity 60th birthday. Many years of life to you.
Thank you,
and
sir.
service to humanity, sir. Okay, please keep that spirit up.
Thank you.
So my team, the IEEE TV team back in the United States, and my own team in India, Shri, Munir, Dhanu, Colin, Demalo, Yati, Pramod and Nagratna have done a fantastic job to bring this program to everyone. We will follow it up with the participants by sharing the information on recordings. And the Q&A, I will share it with you and Mike and Rajan Singh, and kindly provide the answers. We will share it with all the participants. There is a question on certificate. There will be a certificate issued from India Council. We will work with the India Council to make it happen to those people who have attended today. With that, I would like to thank everyone once again. Stay safe, and we will be in touch. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity. Thanks everyone for attending.
Thank you, Michael.
All right. Everyone stay safe, please.